Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Meeting of the Brookline Select Board for Wednesday, December 18th, time is 6:31. First up is review changes to the agenda, if any. I would like to make the suggestion that we move, under new business, that we move item C, the Papoose Lane dog situation discussion, up in front of item B. So we'll basically, new business will be, first we'll talk about the census, then we'll talk about the dog situation, then we'll talk about town meeting time after that. Everybody okay with that? All right. All right, so we'll do that. Scheduled members of the public, we have Tom Simmons here to talk about the U.S. Census Bureau.
Excuse me, your agenda?
Yep.
Let me add something to it.
We're going to have a discussion about that, though, because I think I know what you're going to suggest we
It was
add.
already on in the minutes from the last meeting to continue at this meeting.
Right, but I'm going to suggest that we actually continue the discussion of that at the January 8th meeting, because we have a very full agenda
Okay.
of things that can't really wait.
Okay.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Thanks.
So, unscheduled members of the public, we have Sandy Sherman, who's here, and then we also have unstarted, what was your name?
Teresa Rudolph.
Teresa Rudolph.
Yes, I'm with Tom.
Yep, okay, yeah, that's fine, we record everyone who's here, just random. And I guess I'd start by saying, Sandy, we do have a agenda item specifically to talk about what I think you're here for, but I want to give you an opportunity if there's something else you wanted to talk about other than the dog situation.
It's just a continuation of that dog situation that needs to be,
Okay. Okay.
address that.
Great. All right, the next up is approving the minutes. First up is the meeting, the December 4th meeting. I have Peter's Word document of this, so I'll make the changes to it. On page 1, I just had a couple of things under the window bids. He had Norm Holden's bid for painting the entire thing as $3,700. It was actually $37,000. We'll make that change. The other thing, and actually, God, you can kind of help me verify this, but under cemeteries, under the second paragraph, midway through, it says that $2,000 could be an adequate amount per cemetery. I think we were saying $2,000 could be an adequate amount per year for all of the cemeteries.
These are the last.
That was all I had on page 1. Did anyone else have any other changes on page 1 of the December 4th minutes? Hearing none, anybody have any changes on page 2? I didn't see anything. Anything on page 3? Now that he's made everything super small. Went from being super large to maybe a little too small. Going once, twice, any other changes? Okay, make a motion that we approve the minutes from the December 4th meeting as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joseph. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes from December 4th as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Me.
Shelby, so one abstention. Okay, those are approved. Then we'll move on to the minutes from the December 10th special meeting. We'll remove the W in Bruce's name.
That would be nice, thank you. We did that?
It's so easy to type that.
It is, everybody spells it
Take it
that
out.
way. I think it would be easier if you just changed it, to be honest. Make life a lot easier for everybody. The only other thing that I thought is, under the line that says there was discussion on the highway operations budget, I think we should really just say there was discussion on the FY 2021 town budget, because we did discuss things beyond just the highway portion. But otherwise, that was it. Anybody have any other changes on those? Okay, then I make a motion that we approve the minutes from the December 10th special meeting as amended. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Gwen. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes from the December 10th special select board meeting as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so those are approved. Okay, then we're on to new business, and first up is a presentation and discussion from Tom about the 2020 census.
Excellent. What's best? Should I stand here? Or-
You're right there, that's good.
Wherever you're comfortable. Guy can move around and capture you. You can
Okay.
sit, however you
If
feel.
you don't mind me sitting, I'll just
No, that's,
stay sat. So, my name is Tom Simmons, I live in Chester, and I'm the US Census Partnership Specialist for Windham County, Windsor County, and Sullivan County, New Hampshire. I have a big territory to cover. And with me is Teresa Rudolph, who just came on for Bennington County, and she's gonna watch me as I apply my charm offensive with you guys today. Basically, my job is to go around to the town boards, explain the rollout of the census, changes to it this year, and why it's important for Brookline, and ways we can work together to make sure that we get a full and accurate count of everybody that's here. The Census Bureau does the decennial census every 10 years. You're probably all familiar with it in some form or another, every year ending in 0. We count everybody in the United States. And the primary reason is for reapportionment. And to be perfectly frank, that's probably not going to impact you as much as the fact that many federal programs are tied to the numbers that come back from the census. So for the next 10 years, whatever numbers you produce, that are produced here, is going to affect the amount of funding that Vermont and then this town would eventually get for Meals on Wheels, Medicare Part B, school lunch programs, special education funding for schools, housing, rehab assistance, fuel assistance. There's 65 different federal programs, $675 billion a year, that are completely tied to whatever numbers come back. And once they're recorded, this, in 2020, that's it for 10 years. In terms of the rollout of the census, our job is to count every single body, count them once, count them in the right place. Big difference this year. You used to just get either a form in the mail or someone knocked on the door. That was usually what we've done since 1790. Census Day is April 1st. Starting in early March, by March 12th, everyone who gets mail delivered to their house, which is most of Brookline, most people here get mail delivered to their house. Starting March 12th, you'll get a letter from the Census Bureau inviting you to participate online. Now that mailing is not going to be addressed to Jane Smith. It's going to be addressed to the Occupants Act, or the Household Act, 1100 Bradley Brook Road, because we don't know who lives where. So the second one will come out a week later saying, hey, we haven't heard from you yet, go online and take your census. The third one will be a postcard saying, hey, what's the matter you? We haven't heard from you yet, take your census. The fourth one, which comes out that first week of April, is actually the form itself. And I raise that because there will be some people who will get the first mailing and will not want to do this online, or are not capable of doing it online. And we know there are certain demographics that are much more reluctant to do this online than others, and senior citizens are one of them. Vermont is one of the highest median age states in the country. But if you wait long enough and don't just keep throwing out bulk mail from the federal government every time you see it, that fourth mailing the first week of April will have the actual form itself. So that's the first major change. The internet option is an addition, it's an add-on, it's not an instead of. You will get the form. The second change, and I think this is going to be a relief for many people, is that there's no longer a long-form census. Some of you may remember having a census that went on for 3 pages or more. No more. The decennial census only asks 9 questions. Your name, your address, your phone number, your birthday, your age, how many people live here, race and gender, and that's it. And of course, with how many people live here, that's everyone, whether they're there temporarily or not. And a lot of people, leave off, my niece is living with me while her family figures out some problem they're having, or while she's finishing school. If she's there, she counts. Now, in terms of undercounts, obviously we want to count everybody, especially because you're a small rural community, and especially because everybody counts in terms of the dollars that are attached to it. We know that Athens, and I was mentioning this before, right up the road, between the 2000 census and the 2010 census, there was an increase in the count of 30%, something like 140 people. And when I met with the Athens board, everyone kind of laughed and said, we know that there's not an extra 100 bodies in this town between the censuses, so what happened? And what happened is in the earlier 2000 census, there was an undercount. And there's a couple of ways we can make sure that that doesn't happen. First, for people who do not respond to the census, that's when we hire enumerators to go out and knock on doors. The best thing we can do is hire someone, or more than one person, from Brookline to be the enumerator for Brookline. First of all, it's a lot, it goes a lot smoother if someone can say, hey, Johnny came to my door last night with the census, as opposed to some guy I never saw before came to my door, wasn't sure where he was, and asked me my phone number. Is this legit? It works out better to hire locally. The jobs pay $17.50 an hour, which is not bad. And they're totally flexible. You can work days, nights, weekends, whatever works. So one of the things we want to do is get the word out in the community that, hey, there are jobs here. So that when the door knocking starts, someone hired from Brookline will be doing Brookline first before they're asked if they want to go to surrounding towns. So it makes sense to get someone from Brookline to apply for that job. Even, quite frankly, even if they think they may or may not be able to do it, we start training in March and it runs through the summer. Even if they're not sure they'll be able to do it, get them to apply now on census.gov. And I have a poster that I'll give you can hang in Town Hall if you'd like. Because they can always make a decision that, yes, I'm going to do this, or no, I'm not. But if we've got bodies from Brookline to do it, think of it more of as a civic commitment, if nothing else, that pays you, which is nice, because most of you don't get paid for your civic commitment. The second thing, the second way we can make sure that everyone gets counted is if we look at the statistics for Brookline, and I do this for every town that I go to before I go. 30% of the houses in this town have children in them. And the reason that's important is because the Census Bureau knows that in the last time around, the single biggest undercount was children. Bless you.
So,
For whatever reason. Sometimes there's complex living arrangements and a child's with mom half the time and dad half the time and no one puts them on. Or they are, legally they're supposed to be with mom, but they're with dad. And so neither side puts them on. Or someone has a foster child and they don't put them on because they assume the state puts them on some list somewhere. Since 30% of this town are households with children, we need to make sure that everyone understands that, someone in your house doesn't have to be 18 in order to be counted in the census. Everyone is. One of the initiatives we're taking is that we're working with all the school districts to send a flyer home in March to every household who's got a child in the schools, saying, yes, your child counts, please do that. So that's one way we're working to overcome that issue. The other way we overcome those issues is by partnering with the towns, and basically I have to ask you, how do we get word out to people in Brookline? No one knows your town like you do. I don't. You know your town. You are the trusted voices in your town. So, what some other towns around here are doing, just to give you some ideas. Some towns have very active websites, or listservs, or newsletters that they mail out, or Facebook pages, or some combination of that. If you have any of the above, and I know you have a website, Gary, I know one of the things we can do is provide you with material. I do this every month, either a written article or a flashy logo or graphic image in PDF file that you can post, so that those people who go to your website or read your newsletter, whatever it is, actually get to see information about the census and its importance to the community. Some communities, I'll go back to Athens, they don't have an active website, but there's a newsletter that covers their town, the Athenian. So I write an article every month, and that's put in the Athenian, and it goes out to the houses. In Wardsboro and in Jamaica, in those two towns, one of the most active ways of getting news out is through the churches and through the senior citizen lunches that they have. And so I went to the senior lunches and gave this presentation and talked about it, answered questions, and the churches are keeping recruitment flyers and informational flyers in the back of the churches. So every town handles this in a different way based on what works in that town. I don't know what works in Brookline, but you guys do. I mean, you got elected, so you must know what works here. If you can come up with, I was the only one on the ballot. I didn't show up to a meeting and I got appointed. If you know of a way to get this word out, and you can share that with me, then we can work together to make it happen, either because you post something on your website or because I go to that group and talk. That's really the essence of what I came to discuss tonight and to share with you. And any questions you have, now is the time to ask. I will leave you with a folder of information as well as my business card. And if you've got any questions, or people in the community have any questions between now and the time of the census rollout, basically I'm your point person to call, and I'm not that far away if you need me for an emergency. Before we send door knockers out, we do notify all the local police so they know when this is happening. I've got a special flyer here on confidentiality. People are worried about, well, what are you going to do with the information I give you? Why do you need to know this? And we are 100% confidential. Me, Teresa, every door knocker who goes out there is sworn for life under penalty of a $250,000 fine and 5 years in jail. If they release anything as basic as someone's address, we're not allowed to do that. It doesn't go to law enforcement, doesn't go to building and zoning, doesn't go to schools, doesn't go to ICE, doesn't go to anyone. So whatever you reply in your census stays confidential. Because some people are afraid of giving information out. I understand that.
I already had somebody come to my house.
If that was in the last few months, that was probably, okay, that's, the address checking, that operation ended in October.
Right.
And what they're doing is, we have a master database of all addresses. And sometimes we have to check when there's a new one, or someone on the road has a change in their address number, or they go from a PO box to and we have to check every address in the country. This is a massive operation. 500,000 people are hired to do this. And one of the operations that just ended was just the address checking. So that's all done now. But that's probably what that was.
Can I ask you,
You can ask me as many questions as you want, this is your meeting.
what was the amount that they paid for the $17?
$17.50 an hour.
Good job.
It's flexible, so it's great for teachers, as long as you're 18 years old and have access to a car and no criminal record, you got a really good shot at being hired. Especially in a small town like this, where there's not, hundreds of applicants knocking at the door.
Do people have questions?
Or recommendations? Help me, how do you talk to people in Brookline?
Well, I mean, like you say, we have a town website.
Okay.
There's a listserv that's administrated by a person in town who sends email blasts out to, I think there's a couple hundred people, last time I asked Julie, probably on that email, on that listserv.
And who would I contact to put stuff on it?
The town clerk,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Guy, the town clerk.
you can arrange we can sit down, have a little quick chat over the phone or whatever, and I'll give you all the information, the website, what you need, PDFs and so forth for the posting, and
Okay.
we can do that.
And is your number on the website or?
Sure,
Okay.
but it's just 365-4648.
Thank you. I didn't know if you wanted to say that on the, on air. So.
No, that's quite all right.
Okay. And I tried to be a little nuanced the way I asked that, okay.
I mean, as a town, we don't have a Facebook page, we don't have any real social media pages.
We do have 3 bulletin boards, we post stuff around them.
And where are they?
One here, there's one at the bottom of Whitney Hill, and one out at the junction of Grassy Brook Road and Hill Road, out by the West River.
And does anyone just go and post things there, or does the town have to do it?
No, if you leave them with me, I'll make sure they get
You
put
are
in.
my point man, okay.
Yeah, sort of, I guess.
Many hats.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any thoughts on how to get word out beyond those things?
One quick question,
Joseph, hang on.
I'm sorry.
I think that it would warrant just a couple minutes of recognition at the town meeting. It would only,
Right, that's
don't
true,
assume
town
that you
meeting,
would be able to
sure,
come there,
at the
as you
beginning of
probably
that.
The
have
jobs are available.
your own town meeting, but even if it's just something that one of us just took a couple minutes to say, hey, look, this is, we'll get a little bit of talking points from you, and
Sure.
just hit the talking points, ask any quick
Okay.
questions, because
But
hopefully we'll have half the town there at this town meeting. So.
pre-planned,
That's a good idea.
pre-planned statement.
Piggybacking on that, would you be able to put one paragraph blurb in your town report?
Well, the reason I'm hedging on that is that we're trying to reduce our town report because of the expense involved and so forth. But we have at the town meeting, we have flyers that we put out. We have a whole table where there's flyers of whatever your interest might be, and it's there, and the moderator announces that.
And also, if it was on the agenda, that would be at the beginning of it. If it was on the agenda, it would be.
Well,
No?
I hesitate
Or
to
you
say
say
that,
general?
well, we don't, what we have as an agenda for town meeting are the warrant
The
articles.
warrant articles, right. Well, that
There's
would be
not
under
really,
business, wouldn't it?
it would go at the end when there's any other business,
business.
someone would get up and mention it.
Yeah.
What we could do as far as the town report goes, though, is, I mean, we could mention it in the select board report. in the off chance that anybody will read that. We could mention, I'm fine to throw in something just noting to people that it's a census and encouraging people to participate.
Okay. And I can offer a short blurb to you. The only email address I have is Joe's. Should I continue to send stuff through you, or?
You can use the town email or whatever you want.
Or use town email? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a general select board email, which is brookline.selectboard@comcast.net.
Select board
Yeah,
at Comcast.
brookline.selectboard@comcast.net. Yeah.
Got it.
I can't promise that I'm gonna use your.
No,
word.
I
may
totally,
just
you know what?
mention my own words, but it'd be good to have something.
Anything we can do, it's harder in small towns because there aren't the engines of broadcasting things that some of the larger towns have, so.
So do you hit every address, even though some do online and they do mail, or how does it work?
Yeah, the first mailing will go to every single address we have on our file. Once someone responds, they will not get all the rest of the mailings. So we as soon as they respond, that address will come out of the database.
Okay.
So they wouldn't get that final written one, is what you're saying?
That's correct. So if you do it online, you're not gonna get a form in the mail later. So one way to avoid more junk mail, I'll be fired for saying that. One way to avoid more federal bulk mail is to do the census when the first notice comes.
Makes sense.
Other questions from anybody or thoughts? Any last thoughts from you, Tom? Or?
Yeah, again, thank you for having me, and I feel kind of good just listening and watching you guys. The more you can talk it up in the community, the better. The more people realize it's important for Brookline. That's the bottom line. It's important for the town. No, you're not going to get 3 reps in the State House as a result of reapportionment. That's not going to happen. But.
Oh, I'm out, thanks.
But, if the town applies for a grant in the next 10 years, these numbers could be key. And I don't want to see this town undercounted.
Great. Well, thanks very much for coming. We appreciate it.
I really
Thanks
appreciate
for all your efforts and hope it goes smoothly. And thanks, Teresa, also for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Bruce, just so you know, and Shelby, I'm not sure, we decided to move under new business to move C, the Papoose Lane dog situation, up in front of the town meeting time discussion. So then next up is the Papoose Lane dog situation. Sandy Sherman is here, who's been very involved in this situation. Luckily for us, our recording clerk is also our animal control officer, who's been very involved in this situation. I guess, Dot, do you want to maybe summarize where we're at the moment? Does that make sense?
I guess we're at,
And how you got there as well, however you want to.
well, we're at a point where we have identified 2 dogs, particularly through photograph images, that were in the month of December, strays, picked up, brought to Windham County Humane Society. Well, now I can't think of the dates. December, beginning, I think the first one was in the first week in December. And then there was another situation where these 2 dogs were then, same 2 dogs were picked up, strays, on the Monday, the 9th of December, brought to Windham County Humane Society, but the owners met in the parking lot and got the dogs. And then this most recent catastrophe was on Wednesday morning, Wednesday, December 11th. And so we're gonna let Sandy tell the story in her own words. What happened on December 11th?
So, this was almost like out of a Alfred Hitchcock movie. Approximately 1 in the morning, my dogs started barking and running around the house frantically. And both my daughter and I woke up and went to go look out to see what was going on. When we turned the porch light on, there was 4 dogs that literally bombarded my porch, and they were scratching and clawing to come into my house. It was so bizarre that my dogs didn't even know what to do. They didn't even know how to respond. So when my daughter stepped out onto the porch, one of the dogs growled at her. She was like, no. So the dogs were trying to push in. They wanted in. I had a bag of recyclables on the porch, which they were tearing into and ripping the bag apart. Then I have big picture glass windows, and I have a small window underneath that cranks out, and they were jumping up on the window looking in. It was ridiculous. I was calling state police. Poor Dot, I apologize, I called you several times.
I'm gonna cut in here, because
Yep.
I'll tell you what I did. I don't have a phone in my bedroom, it's in the other room.
Okay.
I guess you called twice, at 1 o'clock, and then like 2 minutes, according to the caller ID, 1 o'clock, and like 2 minutes after 1.
Yep.
And I got up and played the message, and I said, I had the owner's phone number, and I
Yeah.
called up that man.
Yeah.
And I got his voicemail, and I said, Mr. Sherman's on the phone, your dogs are in the yard, you better get down there and get the dogs right away, and that was that.
Yeah.
And sure, then go ahead.
Yep, so I tried, I didn't get anywhere with state police. I tried Dot, I'm trying to think, I think I tried the sheriff's department. I tried, the Humane Society, I called and just left a message, I knew nobody was gonna be there. So my daughter ended up getting in her car and actually going down to their house, which I did not want. I did not know that the owner of the house is actually not there, and I've had an issue where he actually came out behind my house earlier in the year prior to and was burning out behind my house. And I think it was after I had first said something, and he found out that I said something about his dogs barking. So I was hesitant to have her go down there, but she got in her car and got down there because there was dogs running in the yard, and he came to the door, and then he came down, or he came out, he got a couple of the dogs.
It was Matt or the brother?
The brother.
Okay.
And other 2 dogs, I guess, wouldn't go to him, but we didn't, he took the dogs, whatever ones he could get. A couple hours later, 3 o'clock in the morning, I have the same situation. I have dogs on my porch and just clawing to get in. I go out, and it was the 2 dogs that I identified that were in the picture. So this time was a little bit more, this was a little bit harder. The 2 dogs wanting to come in, tearing into, again, the recyclable, trying to get food. My daughter put some food out to try to calm them down, which they ended up wolfing down. And I tried again to call state police. I think I tried to call you again. I think I called the sheriffs. I called the state police back again, because now it's like, what do I do? What do we do? And nobody. So my daughter was like, well, I'm gonna put the dogs in.
Can I just ask a quick
Yep.
question? When you say the state police that you got, like literally, did they tell you that this was something they couldn't deal with? Or
Yeah.
what was the response that you got from
So
the
the,
state police?
the response was that I had to get in touch with the local animal control officer, Humane Society, that this was not something that they dealt with unless the dogs were destroying my property, then, you know, they could make a report, which they made a report anyways, but they said that there was really nothing that they could do. They couldn't take the dogs. So it's kind of like, what are we doing here? I have these dogs, you know. So my daughter put the dogs in her car. She drove to Brattleboro to the police department and was like, what do I do? You know, it was like, here it is, you know, now almost 4 o'clock in the morning, both of us had to work first thing in the morning. They're like, we can't do anything. The animal control officer gets here at 8 o'clock, but the dogs aren't from Brattleboro, so we can't take the dogs. So you're gonna have to hold on to them. So she sat in the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot, bawling, not knowing what to do, feeding them munchkins. Came back and decided to go back up to the guy's house, banging on his door, screaming, I've got your dogs. She said, Mom, I was literally pounding on his front door and trying to get somebody to come to the door.
And the other dogs weren't barking?
She could hear them.
They were in the house.
They were someplace. Yep, they were someplace barking. And so the way the house is set up, there's a walkway and there's like a sliding glass window. So she went around the walkway and she's banging on this door and windows inside to try to get someone to come. She ended up hearing like a ping from a phone, and then all of a sudden this guy, the brother, got up off the floor, scared the daylights out of her, came to the window or the door and was like, you know, like, what do you want? She's like, I have your other 2 dogs. I've been banging on your house. And he came down and literally grabbed the dogs by the scruff of the neck. They didn't want to get out of her car, and grabbed them by the scruff of the neck and dragged them to one of the buildings. So, and then she came home and bawling.
And this is not the person you're talking about there is not actually the owner of the dogs.
The owner works in Rhode Island.
But this is the person who primarily lives at the
This
house?
is the brother, older brother.
So I actually worked for the Humane Society many, many years ago. I actually ran it, so I know Kathy Barrows very well. I had also worked with her at the police department when I worked there prior to that.
This is in Brattleboro.
Brattleboro Police Department. So I had a conversation with Kathy, because actually I was messaging her as well, like, okay, I need help, what do we do?
And this is the Brattleboro
Yep.
Animal Control
Yes.
Officer.
Yep. So there's a long-standing history with the owner of this house as far as dog issues, dog abuse. And she had suggested that if the town, you know, there's a violation obviously with them running loose, they're not tagged, there's no collars. She had suggested make the fines stiff, you know, because what can happen is that there can be a barter, whereas like, you know, we'll waive this fine if you sign the dogs over to the Humane Society. He has done that, I guess, in the past, where he has signed them over. And Kathy did mention that as well. So there's a long-standing history with this particular person. In talking to a coworker who's knows him, He's actually living over in Whitingham, I guess commuting to work. So he's now living with his new girlfriend and family. And I know that that's rumor, but it's coming from somebody that knows him. So the dog situation, you know, the other night, you know, I heard this, you know, the low howl bay, you know, periodically. I at work doing, well, I work at the hospital during the day, I also do chair caning and seat weaving, so there's many times at night, I'm outside in my shop staining. It's continuous barking. Bark, 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 constantly. Summertime is to the point where a lot of us in the neighborhood leave our home because can't stand it anymore. You know, I've talked to neighbors, and the general consensus is that people are scared of this guy, and I am. I mean, you know, I didn't want to sign complaints because I knew that he was going to find out. I knew that he had already been behind my house, but I'm to the point where it's like I can't do it anymore. I know that these dogs are. And there's a lot of them, you know, I mean.
So right now, I have, with Sandy's cooperation, I can issue tickets, at least for the 2 dogs that I have photo ID on. So that's for running for at large for nuisance dog and not wearing their tags, which are part of the ordinance. And each of those would be, you know, fines. You could plead guilty and each one would be worth $25, or go to court and pay court fees. When I tried to discuss this with him, he just said, well, I'll just give it to my lawyer and we'll procrastinate the whole thing. Whatever, we're gonna go forward on the 3 sets, the 3 dates. We can't change the fees in the ordinance. However, Mr. Townsend and I were in contact with the Wyndham Humane Society, and there is a impound fee, which is not part of the ordinance, and we're going to look into increasing the impound fee because they are chronically impounded, and if we can increase that to $50 a pop, then that, besides being ticketed, would then be a financial issue that would be before they're released. I have done the research. They have in the past year. They have turned over 2 dogs in their lifetime that I've researched, turned over 2 dogs. A 3rd dog this August was deemed to be a little too aggressive to be turned over. That might have been the one growling at your door, but the 2 dogs in the picture seem to be quite docile.
They're very sweet.
And would be very adoptable.
They're very sweet. I can identify the other dogs if I had a picture of them,
Yeah.
because they're trying to get into my house.
So they're supposedly bear hunting dogs, but they're not licensed or registered. I checked with the game wardens and spoke with the state police. It's been going on for, you've been there, Bruce. You came last February when we went and inspected it for
With all the ice.
yes, so this is not.
Right, and that's something to mention. So am I correct that a few times at least in the past, there have been wellness, sort of as far as the
condition
of the dogs and the safety of the dogs, both our animal control and I think separately the state police
have decided.
have made visits and decided that
They were fine.
they were fine enough to not be able to take the dogs.
Correct.
Right,
And
in the past.
right, and in the conversation with the dog's owner, he said he's moved the kennel to keep the noise away from the neighbors, but because the ground isn't frozen, the reason why they've been getting out is that the new place they've been digging out of. That's not my problem. It's become Sandy's problem.
Right.
Didn't, in one of your emails, didn't he say 2 of them were being his two had left because he was dropping them off Sunday or something in one of your emails?
Well, one dog by the name of Zeus was sold to someone else. The other dog was not,
Oh, okay.
couldn't be turned over. Another dog, I have a list at home of the dogs' names, it's a little confusing. Yeah.
Because the last email I'd read, it said two was gonna be there, he was getting rid of two of the dogs on Sunday. And this was, I think your email was like Tuesday or Wednesday. And it
Yeah,
said-
yeah, I'll review
yeah,
over
but-
that, but that's,
So I
one
was just
has
wondering,
gone.
so one has gone, right,
And
so now there's only four.
Now there's four, right? Is that
Because I think there was
your house?
originally five, if I remember
At
correctly.
one point there were six.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that was another concern, but there were two owners, so it's 3 and 3, and it's just not been
I also had
satisfactory.
a little pit bull that had come down to my house several times, and he liked rocks, and took rocks off my stone wall and played with them in the front yard. He was adorable. The last time that he had been down, he just kind of hung out, and I knew the situation, so it's kind of like it was a summer day, let him hang out, and the former girlfriend had come down and picked him up, and my son and his friend were out in their shop working, and she proceeded to grab that dog, drag it in, and proceeded to beat the snot out of it in front of my son and his friend, where both of them stepped out and told him to knock it off because she was doing it in front of the children. And she ended up giving both of them backlash, and they're like, look, you're in front of our house, you know, you shouldn't be doing that. And conversation that took place, so I don't know what happened to that little pit bull, but that little pit bull had, Kathy Barrows had talked about that little dog and how it was getting out continuously, and then that's when it was like, look, you either need to get rid of this dog or, you know, do something. And so it ended up there. It actually belonged to the owner's mom. So I don't know where that little dog is. I know that he had shown up on a couple Facebook posts periodically as showing up at somebody's house.
So if you could get to me the paperwork on, or Mona or somebody.
And that was, so that one that day,
Monday.
was it Monday, Mona ended up at my house. She was like, do you know where these dogs are, belong to? Because they showed up at her house, which is almost down near, well, almost to the T. Yeah. Kind of halfway, I guess. So she came to my house, and that was another day that I tried calling the state police, sheriff's department, and tried calling, I called you, and we finally did connect. And then when you called, she had already left to go down to the Humane Society.
And I was about 5 minutes after
Yeah.
they got there. They had done it, because I had gone in and they told me in the office that they had left already.
Yeah. But she ended up having to give him a ride back.
Are those the two dogs you think they claim to be hunting dogs?
Yes,
And I heard you say game warden, have you contacted game warden?
I talked to the game warden, earlier this year about the dogs to see if they were registered bear hunting, because he claimed that bear hunting dogs can travel at any time through people's properties, but they weren't registered. So that's not the case. If they're not, they have to be registered, and they weren't.
But the leash law doesn't apply to them?
Doesn't apply to
because
them
they're
in that
hunting
case,
dogs?
but that's what he was trying to say, but they weren't registered as bear hunting dogs. They weren't trained as bear hunting.
Yeah.
They were wannabes.
No, yeah.
Right.
No, they just wanted in my house.
So one thing that warrants mentioning, just to, and I know you and Dot have talked about this, and I think Dot is working through basically trying to levy as many fines as we can justify levying and other costs, but obviously in comparison to Brattleboro, our structure is totally different. I mean, there, if a dog is loose, the first offense is a $200 fine. That's our charge after a fourth offense. You know, the first offense on our ordinance is a written warning. So we just don't have the same punitive fee structure that larger towns might have. But I think we're trying to work through and levy as many fines as we can levy and try whatever mechanisms we can think of to try to
Discourage that bad behavior and bad ownership.
Right.
Did you have a question, Justin?
Yeah, I have two questions. One for Sandy. When Kathy was talking about making the fines steep and seeing such a disparity in our fines versus theirs, did she mean what does steep mean? Is it like $1,000? Like
I'm not really sure. She just,
They're $200 for the first
for the
offense.
first fine. So that's so just going off that, I was curious if what steep meant was well over that.
right, and I'm not sure how the increments go, but I do know that, if there's an ongoing issue, it could be like, the conversation that could take place would be like, here's what you could end up having to pay, here's your choice. You either, face these fines, these penalties, or we'll waive what we have now if you give the dogs up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can do that as well, we can do a 50% waiver in our ordinance.
If they give the dogs up.
Well, we can always I tried to negotiate with him on the phone and he said no.
Well, so, and maybe this is something that I have to look into a little more personally as well, but in the ordinance, is that something that maybe we could change? Because
You'd have to
seems as
amend it.
though- What was that?
You'd have to amend it.
Yeah, yes. What's a first time fee? It's like just a warning.
It's a,
And
yeah,
that's what's our
warning.
highest.
it's on, the ordinance is online, it's.
Yeah.
It's a warning, and then the second offense is $25, the third offense is $50, the fourth offense is $100.
Is that
And each of
something-
those are cut in half if you plead guilty to them.
Is that something we should maybe amend, because there's a big difference between, let's say you get 4 offenses, but your dog was just lost and, being friendly and lost and it got picked up 4 times. That's a huge difference from what happened to Sandy, which is, you know what I'm saying? Like there
The
maybe,
problem is,
You can't
say,
Right.
and I like you, so I'm not gonna send you a ticket,
no, I understand that, but if you wrote in a way to protect against that could possibly be to bring it to the board. I mean, I
Could
think
be the
that-
dog ordinance,
Yeah.
the ACO person and make those decisions, I don't know
Okay.
if it's hard to cut that fine line,
hmm.
it really is.
Is this something that warrants discussion? Because it seems like our hands are tied by our own ordinance.
I think
in this
it-
situation.
Well,
We just redid it last year, it's a lengthy procedure with hearings to have an
Yeah.
ordinance.
yeah, I mean, I think that's, could be a topic of discussion at a later time, whether we want to review or possibly change a dog ordinance.
But that's why I said the
Yeah.
fee at the shelter, which comes back to the town.
Yeah.
Which could reimburse the town for the time it's spent for the office staff to look up the rabies certificate, to fax the information down to the shelter, to get dogs released and things of that sort. Those fees come back to the town, so I think we need to up those fees. It's right now $25. I think easily be made $50 or $60
Okay.
per capture, per.
So my other question is that, my understanding is that he is renting the house with the option to buy, so there's still a landowner, which I had contacted many times in the beginning, because the parking was just, it was enough to make you insane from morning till right through the night. And I contacted the landowner many times, and he just kept saying, well, I'm sorry to hear that, I'll reach out to him and have him stop. And then it was, well, they're looking to buy the house, so you're gonna kinda have to get used to it.
And this is for parking and whatever, you're saying you've contacted the landowner about concerns about things unrelated to the dogs.
No, this is about the dogs.
Okay,
Yeah, no, this
Sorry.
is strictly, this is strictly about the dogs. Because they were renting the house, so
Uh-huh.
there's an owner
Right.
of this house.
Mhm.
So I don't know where, I don't know the rules, I guess, with that, if the landowner can be held responsible for this nuisance.
I don't know that there's anything in our ordinance that goes beyond
Dog owner.
the
owner of the dog, yeah.
And I don't think there's anything in it that, I mean, whether there are other civil recourses separate to that. But as far as our ordinance goes, I don't think there's anything beyond the punishment of the owner of the dog, regardless of whether they may be the owner of the property or not.
So I guess my concern lies right now with the condition of the dogs, where they're living, as far as being well cared for. It weighs heavily. With the weather, I mean, these are short-haired dogs. It's hard to hear them, either howling or barking. I mean, they've been a little bit quieter, but I can still periodically hear them. I can't even imagine being the surrounding neighbors, like closer. I mean, 'cause I'm down the road and I can hear it plain as day. I mean, that night, actually, there was a dog out in the, was another dog out in the woods, like bang, it was, sound like it was like right outside my window. Is there a wellness check?
Well, I mean, I'll say this, I mean, I love animals, that's why, pretty much do what I do. And more hours are available in the summer because it's more daylight, but from 8 to 8, I'm available, but I'm not gonna do wellness checks in trespassing on people's properties and just showing up, especially if they're not home. For instance, this morning, you had called, and when I went there, the 2 cars were there. Now, had I gone there and started coming out and they arrived, they would have been pretty upset with me for being on their property. So I have to be very careful. That's not my purview to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, because there hasn't been a car there all week.
Yeah, I don't
There was
think
only footprints of
in the
whatever children walked in yesterday.
I don't think the children really live there.
There was,
I think they're with their parent mother.
there was like little footprints going up the.
But I don't think that's for us right now.
Right, well, right, but my concern is that if there's nobody there, if people are not staying at the house, how are these dogs, are they getting fed?
But there was somebody there today.
Right. But this is the frustration. It's like, are they barking because, they're trying to keep warm? Are they, I know they're hound dogs, they're gonna bark, but, what's the driving force behind it? So this is where it's not just the fact that they stormed my house literally trying to get in. It's the long-term, care. And then you have an unneutered male and you have a female that looks like she's had a gazillion puppies. And I do know that they had 10 puppies and were right in my neighbor's field that bordered his property, just all sitting there looking at him. So it's frustrating.
Since it's ongoing and they're not making it a point to retain the dogs to their own property, if these dogs showed up and they just happened to find a bigger humane society, say Rutland, Vermont, it would be tougher for them to go and get them, bring them back. I'd try that route. Take the dogs and if he wants them, go get them.
Can we do that?
If he doesn't, somebody nice might get them and try to keep them at home.
Incoming form, you have to swear where the location of pickup is. Incoming, when you fill out where you found the dogs.
Well, you still could.
But you
Yeah.
can't change? you have to go to like the closest one, or are we tied to Wyndham County?
Well, we have a designated pound
We have
keeper,
a-
which is the
We
Wyndham
pay for
County
it.
Humane Society, so I
I thought of
think
that.
that's
You
where
said it out
we're
loud, you read my
obligated.
mind.
Take
I
it
thought
further away and.
taken out of
let
Massachusetts or
yeah.
something.
That's a
but-
good idea.
Somebody nice might find it.
Is there anything that the Humane Society, speaking of the Humane Society, I mean, could we ever consider trying to do a wellness check involving anyone from the Humane Society? I don't know that they have
I've been
any
trained to level 1 criminal.
staff to be able to do that, or if that would be any different than, sorry, go ahead.
I got trained by the Vermont State Police to level 1 criminal investigation for animal wellness, and our Humane Society, yes and no. Your town's gonna have to invest a bunch of money in the process, and if we're willing to invest some money in the process, we could. I mean, we can buy some cages, you could, yeah, it would cost, we would.
Well, I'm not saying to how, I'm saying
I mean,
as
they
far as
can have-
merely as far as the wellness check, as far as whether, is everyone comfortable that the safety of the dogs is not an issue?
Well,
The
for
wellness check.
instance.
Although again, I mean, my understanding of it is it's probably a much lower bar than what I would ever be comfortable watching a dog.
Well, tomorrow's gonna be
Conditions I would
frigid
watch a
cold
dog
out.
living.
These
Mine's
guys,
gonna
Sandy
be
said they're
2.
short-haired dogs. So are they warm enough? Who wants to come with me up there tomorrow? Right?
If the dogs
Oh,
are
yeah.
considered a hunting bear dog, shouldn't that be seasonal? Because they can only hunt seasonally.
They supposedly have Bruce left, but we went, I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do.
So I do know, as far as the Humane Society is concerned, when I was there, we did cruelty investigations. I actually did those with Kathy Barrows. And it was where there was a report that was made, and, because they actually need, the evidence, to be able to go on a cruelty investigation. I mean, here I am, it's like.
But Stan, but you realize I have no evidence, and I've been saying this for months.
What is my word here right now?
Okay, I'm saying you're part of the
So-
minutes and that, but.
Right, so here I am, and I've like had it as far as listening to it, I've had it, now it's been presented into my home. And, and I've got, neighbors coming to my house, who are these dogs belong, who do they belong to? So it has to stop someplace. I mean, this can't keep happening. I've spoken to neighbors close by, and one in particular, she's ready to move because it's too much for her, but she's scared of who is living there. So,
Guy,
I just want to, I'm going to speak as a town agent now. There are statutes that address some of these concerns, and I think it would be wise to look in these statutes, because there are different scenarios where dogs are annoying people and so forth that are in the statute, and that those problems are addressed. And I think if we take a look at that, maybe we could find an answer, because I don't think you're the only person in the state that has this issue, and these issues have come up time and time again. But there's a whole section in the statute books about dog ownership and responsibility and obligations of the owners and so forth. And I think if you take a hard look at that, you may come up with something that you would be able to address with the person who owns these dogs.
I think you're gonna need a lawyer, because I don't think I have the capacity to do all that personally.
is it possible to, I know that Kathy Barrows would be more than willing to help out in this situation. And from one conversation that I had, from what I understood, state police had offered to help out as far as, this situation. I just feel like things get to a point and then it just doesn't go any further until it happens again. And then, you know, now we're in a situation where they're getting out, you know, and kind of like your idea.
I would think a
I
game
like
warden
your
would be
idea,
on
too.
top of the situation personally.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea, I guess I
I
just
feel
think we
that's
probably.
part of what he does, and he should have authority over state police and maybe get to the bottom of it, but.
I mean, and as far as the state police are concerned, you know, my son had called once and we were like, he's, you know, this barking is just going on and on. It was like 11:30 at night, he was out in his shop. And the state trooper asked me if he'd mind going down to the house and knocking on his door and asking him to quiet his dogs down. My son was like, I'm not going down to his house. So, you know, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated and mostly I'm concerned about the welfare of these dogs.
Okay, I guess I'd like to suggest that, okay, I think to your point, I think we should, and I can work with Guy to go through the statutes and try to figure out what beyond our local dog ordinance might be useful for us to leverage for this. The other thing is, we have a contact at the state police, right, as far as somebody at Westminster Barracks. Well, no, but honestly, not true.
Lieutenant French is the
Yeah.
barracks
I think
commander.
it might make sense for me to give a call to him to try to see what they might be able to help with as far, because there's only so far that our animal control officer, or any of us quite frankly, can do with this, and we do need the help of the state police. They're the only law enforcement we realistically have access to.
Kathy's full-time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, they have a police force and lots of other things that we don't have, so it's a very different situation, but, so let's do that and see what ideas we can come up with, while at the same time
I'll do my
following
municipal,
through on the
I'll work on like those
fines.
three individual incidents, and I'll be sending them out
We'll
this week.
see what additional pressure we can put on the situation to try to help it.
Help those dogs,
Right.
right.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks,
You have a lot of
Sandy. I mean-
patience, and,
I'm sorry for the situation,
Me too.
but
It's sad. You
Very
know.
sad.
I mean, and you know, I'm not gonna lie, I'm nervous, you know, about, I mean, I know he's gonna find out, but it is what it is. So I'll just have to deal with it if he does come to my house, so. But it's the welfare, it's not only the welfare of the animals, it's the welfare of our neighborhood right now, and it's tough.
I can certainly speak to that as well. Obviously, with my family living there, it's not a new problem
Right.
for them, and it certainly is
Yeah.
really scaring some of them, so.
Yes, and yeah, I did reach out, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm taking the step forward to put hopefully an end to the situation. So, you know, I'll do what I can to help. You know, now that here I am exposing myself to this person, but I'll do what I can to help. I don't know what I can do.
Okay, Kathy.
thank you, we do, yeah, I mean, we do appreciate it.
So if they do end up back at my house again and it's some unreasonable hour, what do I do?
I would call the game warden.
Okay.
I would have them come and talk to you. It's a hunting dog, they must have some authority over him.
Okay,
He could, maybe if he doesn't do nothing, he could tell you what you can legally do.
right,
But I would think a game warden has more authority than a state trooper.
right.
They don't need a lot of stuff.
But they're supposedly hunting dogs, but they're not registered as hunting
Well,
dogs.
I understand that, but still, a game warden,
They'd be able to tell her what she can do.
a game warden would have
It's a good
the
idea.
knowledge that you need to straighten this out.
Right.
Even more so than a state trooper.
Okay,
State trooper will deal with
What's his name?
people and dog issues,
right.
Okay, we're,
but I feel a game warden
Dave
is.
Tad.
If he came here and he was really good.
It's worth a try.
Right.
That's a good point. The game wardens have the
Yeah.
authority of the state trooper on top of
Okay.
all their authority with the.
Cause I know he
So-
came
And
here
they're
once when we had the
familiar with
bear
hunting
problem,
dogs,
he was really
hunting
good.
dog rules and regulations, and they might have a way out for you.
Okay,
I do know that there is a man who does animal control. I think his monthly fee is $300 a month to be on the board, to be on call for a town. But he also has the ability to come, take the dogs, board them, and would come at any time of day and night and take care of the situation. And that might be, you know, that would be a last resort, but that would be an expensive one, but that.
No, that's where the statutes would come in handy, because there are, I remember some of them, I don't recall each one, but there's some definite statutes that address some of your concerns.
But if our expenses, if we had to put that expense out for him to get his dog back, he'd have to pay that.
Right, or he wouldn't get his dog in the town, have to
Yeah.
absorb the fee.
Yeah,
The game wardens also are affiliated, the new barracks up in Rockingham is the game warden, are
Okay.
positioned there as well.
okay.
But I feel like if you called him to your house for this situation, he would probably go to that house and say, you know, here's the deal.
Okay,
good idea, Bruce.
Good try.
yeah.
Great idea.
So make room in my garage with the man. Okay, all right, well, thank you.
Sandy, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We will
Exactly.
continue to-
It's, yeah, it's sad, so, but hopefully we'll get to the bottom of it. So, all right, thank you so much.
Thank
All right,
you.
everybody have a happy holiday.
You too.
So,
You too.
All right, all right.
You should-
I didn't take much minutes,
That's all right.
but conversation, discussion was held.
Okay, so now moving on to town meeting time.
Is there a cutoff time that we have to do that?
To do what?
Set the town meeting time?
We have to warn town meeting between 30 and 40 days prior to it. What I'll say is for the next meeting, for the first meeting in January, we really need to,
Everything's
we
just
need to be able
budget and
to
town
vote
meeting.
on the complete warning, which will include the time. So
Can we set the date on
we
the,
really need, sorry,
can we set the date on the 8th?
the date has already been set.
I mean the time, I'm sorry.
It has to coincide with her
I'm
operations.
not, I would prefer we not first discuss it at that point. We could, I think we need to discuss it tonight. We won't formalize it until the 8th, but
Okay.
I think we need to know what we're doing, because if nothing else, I have to draft the complete warning for that meeting on the 8th. And I'd rather we not, we'll have a bunch of other things that we'll need to be changing about it, so. I mean, we obviously, the voters of the town voted to have it on Monday with the intention being Monday night.
Yep.
How long is the town meeting usually? I don't recall.
2.5 hours.
The last few years, it's been
3 hours.
3 hours, let's call it.
So what my intent was with my question, was I picked up that book today that Jeb Luskin was talking about, it's only 70 pages. I can polish that off in no time, I just wanted to hear that opinion before we considered the time, because according to Deb, they had a great deal of success, I'm not saying we set it at 4:30, success at that time, so I at least wanted to hear the opinion and present that to everybody and see if that was something we could discuss and consider.
Well-
I didn't mean 4:30, I mean discussion of the information in the book.
Joseph.
I mean, more information is great, but I do agree we should at least have a discussion. And I would personally think
Right.
that 4:30 would be a
Too
little
early.
early.
You could never have
My initial proposal would be 6 o'clock, the meeting starts, and then maybe we always have like snacks and such there,
4.
maybe at 5 o'clock.
Something ahead of that.
4, that's
Yeah.
pretty close to what I was thinking.
We have to talk with the people that own the daycare
Yeah, I
center.
can talk to Lydia.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's certainly.
Because we
a
can't
factor.
go too early because.
Right, because they have
Yeah.
people there till
We have
6
to-
o'clock,
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking 6 o'clock as well.
and then you have to set
Again,
up.
like you said, with the potluck potentially starting at 4:35,
Yeah,
whatever,
we gotta consider
potentially,
that
what
too,
works
right?
with them. The other thing we need to keep in mind, as far as Olivia is concerned and that stuff, is we need to set up that room, the
That's correct.
multi-purpose room, in
Right.
advance of that.
Right,
So, in an ideal world, they could maybe get by without using the multi-purpose room on Monday so that we could set it up on Sunday, because otherwise I'm not exactly sure how we
How
get
we
that
do it.
room set up.
And
Because I can't set it
and
up
you've
on
made a
Monday
point
during
in
the
that-
day.
You've made a point in
Most of us
that
can.
they're not aware of what we're doing at this point, so.
Well, they're aware that we're having town meeting on Monday night,
Are they?
because Susie was there after town meeting last year, and I remember we had a discussion with her
Okay.
about it.
Okay,
She doesn't know the exact timing of it, but.
okay.
It's not gonna be more of an inconvenience than any other year. I mean, it's still
Right,
gonna
it'll
take
be
the
less than-
multi-purpose room for a day
Right,
if
we're
we set up
trying-
early, you know what I mean? Like, either way, it's not
We're
like
entitled
they,
to have it because it's our right, it's in
It's in the lease.
But we don't want to, we want to work with them, obviously.
Well, and historically, they've closed on
That's
town
correct,
meeting
they've
day,
had
which
something going on.
I don't,
Tina did.
I guess I don't, in this case, because it'll be the day before, I don't know if it changes anything about how they might wanna do their stuff in it. I don't know if Susie even does that, that's what
Yeah, that's a good point.
Sunny Lane used to do.
We'll have to,
Make,
I
if we
think-
discuss it now, make them aware of it, have we discuss it on the 8th, don't you think?
well, we should, probably have an idea of when we want it prior to a discussion with them.
I don't-
That way we could go to them and be like, hey, on Monday night, can we, or, whatever it is, can you
Can we
just
set
not
up on
use the room
Sunday?
on
It takes us-
Monday?
What's it take us, an hour to set up?
I will say that I
Not even, we could probably, if people are available, we could probably set it up. And the other thing is, I don't think it's unreasonable, and we would have done it, this is the way we end up tearing down the room. Maybe as people show up for the potluck, they put out the chairs.
Which is,
Maybe that's part of what,
I'll
but in any
help
event,
set up
we
the
could maybe
room.
work around.
I don't think we have to worry about that too much, setting up the room.
Alright.
No,
So how do people feel about 6 o'clock?
6 sounds good.
that's what I was,
I think it
that
makes
seems
sense.
amenable,
Alright,
and the potluck before it.
okay, so do you wanna
Yeah.
talk to Olivia
Yeah,
about
I'll
that
let you know what
timing?
we're thinking.
all right now.
We'll formalize it in the warning on the 8th, but that's what we'll plan on
Okay.
going with, and
I'll mention it
unless
to
we
her.
hear
Yeah,
compelling
Who's
reason,
who's
otherwise-
handling the
6
potluck?
p.m. It's
Look at
March
me.
2nd,
That's what I meant, somebody's gotta,
who's handling the potluck?
Monday,
Yeah.
March 2nd.
Usually
somebody
it's,
set it up.
you talking
I
about
think the
food
last
itself?
time, they have to set it up.
Okay. What do you
And I
need
think the
for?
last, well, no, because somebody's gotta be in charge. Do not look at me.
You started it.
No, but,
Go ahead.
but what I'm
Go ahead.
saying, before, Joyce Meal used to do it. When we first started, she did it, and then Penny did it for a long time,
Right.
because it went, all the contributions for the meal.
Right.
And I think the last 2 years Barbara Bourne did it,
That's correct.
cause it went, but somebody, they,
Sarah Webb has done it the last couple of years,
Yeah.
has coordinated
Somebody
the
did.
information.
for the,
So, we have basically 90 days until town meeting roughly. So, yes, no? Today is what, the 18th, and we got the second or third,
Less than that.
less than 90 days, sorry, maybe
Seven.
7.
so what I'm saying is
So-
somebody needs to,
Once we get this finalized, maybe on the 8th, then we can start putting out feelers
Yeah.
for who would like to contribute their time. to
that's
do
right,
this.
Sarah did.
Yeah, right.
Kind of.
Which I don't think we've ever figured that out prior to warning it anyway. Just
just,
figure it out in
Right,
the
we
weeks
haven't.
leading up to it. So
Right,
that's,
we've
I don't
done it
think
weeks
that's,
before.
I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah.
No.
Has
Yeah,
it- I'm sorry, has anyone checked the lighting in the back there? Because it's gonna be pitch black.
There's a problem with that.
Okay,
And
all right,
and
I'm just,
you brought the, well, wait a minute,
No.
I'll make a quick answer.
get portable.
It was led into that because the floodlights, a couple floodlights weren't working in front. So I led it into, and Olivia brought that up. So I initially thought that the dimmer switch on the inside of the entranceway was controlling everything, including that. Okay. I fixed the lights in the front, this was about 3 weeks ago, and I checked out back, and there's two lights. There's a regular overhead light, and there's a double floodlight. It looks like there's a little black timer on it. Well, I tried to make it, first of all, there's no switches on the inside of the meter. That's the first thing. The second thing is I couldn't make it work with that switch. The third thing was, I was considering maybe calling Peter Meyer over, maybe you could take a look at it to see why they weren't working. But your answer to your question is, no, they do not work right at this point.
So
And I don't know the cause.
So here's the other thing though, and I thought we had had a discussion with Susie and or Olivia quite a while ago about this, but in my opinion,
The lighting?
no, about the access. I do not think it is a good idea for us to be having people walking
You're
all
right.
the way down that driveway
Right.
to the back door. and
Especially if it's
Right,
icy.
why would even?
at night. They
So-
should be
so
coming
much.
through the main entrance
Where there's
and down the hallway. And
Yeah.
my recollection is that Susie
Had no
didn't,
problem.
was totally fine with that.
Yeah, I'm kind of.
So,
getting back
so
there.
people will come and go from the front entrance of the building.
Okay.
And that's well lit. one.
It is.
And two, if we really want to, we can have a monitor or two, because there's steep stairs, there's 23 of them, I've counted 300 times, going down the steps. We can have a couple of monitors there if you have an elderly person or something needs assistance.
If,
Huh?
if anyone has a big problem or a need, then we could certainly just keep the back, it's gonna be cleared out and they could drive.
Well, they do
down.
anyway.
Yep,
Yeah.
we can, right.
Tom Bloom does anyway, because he has to.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's open.
So anyway, I think that hopefully if we can just plan that we're not really expecting people to be going down and
Right.
around and back and in that way, then it's
Right.
less of a concern.
Right. There's no reason for that, to go out back.
Okay, so we'll pencil in a 6 PM start for the actual town meeting.
Also,
On Monday.
another suggestion we might think about, I'll pass it by Olivia, is the possibility of having someone maybe from their staff or something helping us assist with maybe a daycare upstairs while the meeting's going on. So if somebody wants to go to the meeting and has 2 kids and can't go because of the 2 kids,
Check it out,
pardon?
good idea.
And, because this has been done before, well, Tina did it in the past.
Yep.
So maybe they'll offer that.
Okay, Chief.
Yep.
Yes.
So I'll mention that to Olivia as well. All those things are gonna get some answers for you.
That's a good idea, I'm sure.
Cool, thank
Because
you.
you know what the main idea is.
Okay, anything else on town meeting time for the moment? All right, moving on to old business. First up is road equipment purchase update. So were we inundated with super good-looking bids,
Real competitive.
Not necessarily.
super competitive?
As it sits right now, because this would be the close of the bidding process, we have 3 bids in. One for the machine that we looked at last year, and that is, as it sits, the same offer. And then we have 2 machines that are, I think that on the committee, we all agree that it is the best machine that fits our parameters, but 2 of the bids are for the exact same machine. One of them's a little newer than the other one.
What's the difference in price, Joseph?
It's like, I don't remember off the top of my head. It's, less than $10,000 is the difference. And
There's a dramatic difference in the age between the 2?
no, the age is a relatively small difference, but I have to check on all the attachments. One of them has a tilting bucket on it, and so that's a pretty expensive attachment. But I'm going to get all of the bids like printed out, and so at our next meeting, which that was something that we needed to discuss, not our next select board meeting.
Yeah, your
Our
next,
next,
right.
our next road purchase equipment, whatever, advisory meeting, which I think would be best if everyone could come to that meeting so we can actually have a rigorous discussion about what's going on.
Is it scheduled yet?
Well, so we tentatively were aiming for Monday the 6th, if that would work for everybody else.
Monday, the 6th of January?
Yes.
I'm totally unsure about me. I could be away.
Okay.
Seriously.
I think that's
It's up in
probably,
the
I think
air.
that's probably
We
fine.
were thinking about going to the Cape.
So the one thing to just, I mean, so that we're all on the same page about timing of things. Unless we wanna get ourselves in a situation where we have to have a special meeting. At the meeting on the January 8th, we have to vote the exact detail of the town meeting warning articles.
And that's why.
Which would mean we have to, right, so I'm just saying, if that meeting is January 6th, we all need to go into it understanding that a decision has to come out of that, of what is going to be warned, if anything. Maybe nothing ends up being warned
Yeah, my
as part of
understanding,
the town meeting
my understanding
article.
was that we would come to a tentative decision, and that if anything needed to be voted on, we would have to vote on it at the meeting on the 8th. Is that not,
Yeah, well, right, but what we'll be voting on is the actual article as it would appear in
Yes.
the warning at that point. So I'm just saying that the details that make up that article will have to get finalized at the meeting on the 6th.
that was the plan, and that's why
Okay.
I wanted everyone to
Sure.
be available for that meeting. So, and yeah, it's gonna be three main bids. 2 of them are for the same machine, which we can discuss the specifics at the meeting. It's
Could you
Yeah,
send
close.
what was that?
could you like scan or email a copy of the bids in the meantime?
I could get them together and email
Just add it.
some out. Yeah.
Just that way,
I can email.
it'll make the meeting on the 6th maybe more productive if we've had a chance
Yeah.
to.
I'll email them out
Digest.
Pricing.
prior to the meeting, so
Or
you
just
guys
even
can
the
look them
specs,
over.
like not like, yeah, not just enough that like, cause I'm not gonna understand the minutia of the machines.
Yeah.
It's not my,
Minutia.
Yeah.
Can't spell it.
that's okay, you don't have to quote me.
There you go, spell
But
it.
that's not my area of expertise, so I'm not gonna understand, but at least, you know, the bare bones details of, you know, things that differentiate the 3 different bids, and the price points. And then that way, when we come in, even for those of us who are coming in as like
Yeah.
layman's terms, we can.
And do you guys do your meetings at 6?
We do them at 6:30.
6:30, okay.
That was the plan.
Just a quick question. This is a strange scenario because if you have 3 select board members at a meeting discussing town business,
Oh, boy.
and the committee is,
Yeah.
there's a little conflict there. I'm almost wondering if it would be advantageous for the committee to come to a select board meeting and make their presentation. I don't know. This is a strange,
You got a
So-
point.
Uh,
you know, I don't,
I think one of the big things is time, which I agree with David. You know, we need to obviously
Yeah.
focus budget at the next one, and then we have to get things figured out so we can warn it on the 8th. Would that, so what
I
you're
don't
saying is there's a
think-
problem with having too many selectmen at one
Yeah, you
meeting?
can't have a
Yes.
quorum, you can't meet in
No,
a
you
quorum
can't.
because
Without-
we've never
that's the
been-
open meeting law, yeah.
Yeah,
Right, although in the
It
context,
shouldn't even be email,
it's
I don't
in the
think.
context of a meeting that
We did
is
make rules for
warned
emails.
and open for an advisory committee. So is it really,
Yeah, I don't-
would that really even be a violation?
I don't know if,
Since it's sanctioned by
if you
us,
want, I
it's
can
not
throw it up at the VLCT.
We're not meeting in private, we're meeting,
No.
warn
we're meeting as part of
warn
a,
all your
I don't-
meetings.
And there's
Yeah.
minutes, it's not like
Can I make
a.
a suggestion?
I think we take our chances if somebody wants to go to a secretary.
Well, it's kind of like when we had that meeting, like opening the bids for the salt and sand shed. Was that a warned select board meeting?
Yes, it was.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
Very well.
Bruce, we're going. Bruce,
We selected, or we voted on having an advisory committee. My opinion is, they need to make the recommendation, a solid recommendation, A, B, and C, and tell the select board. A for 100,000, B for 95,000, C for 82,000, this is what the equipment has, this is the amount of mileage it has, this is what wear and tear it has. Put it on the table, we discuss it and vote it. That's the way I see it. We've got competent people on this committee, we've got Archie's on it, correct?
That wasn't the question, the question
No, that's
was the
exactly what
meeting
we're-
has, but the meeting, does that mean the meeting has to be warned as a select board type thing?
Yeah, I think we're talking about different things. Bruce, I agree with you that, like, I'm planning on attending this meeting, but in no way, shape, or form am I expecting that I'm the one who's going to be deciding which machine makes the most
No, I'm not
sense.
implying that.
But by being at the meeting, or by a couple of us at least being at the meeting, we can at least probably eliminate the need for us first seeing it on the 8th and maybe having some clarifying questions,
Right.
which might
Okay.
slow us down.
So is this meeting
Okay.
the
So I
sixth?
think that makes sense, and I really don't think that this would be,
Is
in
this,
principle, this is not a violation of the open meeting law, so I don't think we need to worry
You
about
do?
it.
is this meeting the 6th to determine which one of those 3 bids is
No.
gonna be?
No, so it's not a
It's
violation
to
of open meeting.
determine a recommendation
That's
from the
correct.
advisory committee.
This is not,
What shape that recommendation makes, I guess I don't know.
yeah, you're not
We
violating
never
open meeting law.
completed, we never completed the discussion about how we're going to bring this before the town. And so at this meeting, you know, we're gonna have, as you were saying, everything lined up of,
Cut and
you
dry.
know, these are the 3 bids we have, this is
What
what
they do.
we're leaning towards, and then we have to decide exactly how we're
Right.
putting that, how we're moving forward and bringing this before the town.
Right.
That's it, okay, but
And then if we at the meeting, whatever decision we make, if it requires a vote, the way I had understood it was that we would resume the discussion and cast the vote on
On
the
the
8th at the select board.
Well, there may well be a vote at your advisory committee meeting, which is what this is, as far as what to recommend to the select board, but right. The actual, any vote on what the select board will do moving forward with it won't happen until the select board meeting on the 8th.
and then you can do your work.
Yeah, the select board will make the ultimate decision
Right, and do the wording.
based on the
Right.
recommendation.
Right, but again, what I'll say, because we've been in this situation before, and we're not gonna be in it again. We are not going to be crafting an article wording for the very first time at
Yes.
our meeting that we have to vote and approve it all during. So we'll at least come out of the advisory committee meeting with an idea
correct
of
wording.
what the warning should be.
But you want the
Based on the
warning finalized on the
recommendation.
8th, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, the wording will be finalized on the 8th, but it won't be started on the 8th, which is
Correct, okay.
what
Well, that's
could
the advisory
potentially happen
committee's for.
otherwise.
That's what the advisory committee is for.
Right.
We're just tightening it up,
Right.
basically.
So
Going over it.
basically Joseph will have the 3 machines set up with the correct wording?
No, I think,
No.
I think what the advisory committee meeting on the 6th is going to be, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I would expect it to be, is it's the advisory committee is going to review and discuss the bids that have been submitted and make a recommendation based on their understanding and their opinions of whether the town should move forward to attempt to buy
A, B, or C?
any of them or none of them, and also discuss how does it make sense to move forward with that? Does it make sense to ask the town for permission to buy a specific piece of equipment, or does it ask the town to just approve a ballpark amount of money with the intention of there being one specific blah, blah, blah?
Okay.
And our purpose there, as select board members, so anyone who can go, is just to have our opportunity to ask all those questions, more about the individual, about the recommendation itself,
Right.
and get that out of the way, so that when we come to the 8th, we're ready to.
And to support them if there are things that they're unsure about as far as what, and just to weigh in on some of the process stuff. and have opinions on the equipment if we have them, but yeah.
Is Monday night
Like any
available on
townsperson
the
would.
calendar?
What night is it?
Monday
Monday is
6th.
January 6th.
I
'Cause
couldn't, I couldn't find next year's calendar.
Well, it's 'cause it's not up and people are.
20?
Monday.
No, I didn't see it posted.
What date is it?
The 6th,
January 6th. Monday, January 6th.
Cause I know somebody posted.
That's good.
Yep, that's good.
Mark will recall that I got up and walked out there the other night
Yeah.
to check, because I made that mistake more than once.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so Monday, well, assuming there's no conflict, Monday
Doesn't look like it.
We got the holler from
at
Guy.
6:30. Where's everything at? Can we-
And then,
Sorry, just.
who knows what happens, by the time town meeting comes around, all these machines are gonna be bought up by somebody else.
You don't know.
That is a possibility.
That is a possibility,
That's
right.
Yeah, probably well, we'll have to discuss how
In the middle
specific.
of winter, you
continue.
Right.
push snow, you never know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What a thought.
They're on sale in winter maybe.
First is gonna be a-
I don't know, man.
Okay, anything else on that? Alright. Okay, moving on to 7B, to consider building commissioner position. So you should all have a draft of, and there's one or two copies up on the table if
One
anybody
there,
else wants
I
one.
think I gave one to
You
Mark.
have them, Shelby?
I do have one.
Okay, go.
So, I took a stab at redrafting a description of the building commissioner, which I'll let everyone have an opportunity to read. It was generally conceptually the same, I thought, as Bruce's, just with some additional wording in some places and clarification maybe, but largely the same, I think.
Is this very similar to like the road commissioners?
There is no description for the road commissioner that I've been able to find.
Very well.
Nor have I been able to find any model descriptions of those kinds of positions on
Wait a
VLCT.
minute, I'm gonna put it,
Model road commissioner?
yes,
Yeah,
that's what I modeled it after, isn't it?
Yeah.
You gave that to me or
No,
something?
the road commissioner that I've seen is a paragraph in a statute or of a road description.
I
Well, I'm not saying different towns. I mean, as far as VLCT
Because I didn't
is
invent
concerned.
what I wrote, I copied it. I'm honest, and she made a little change.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we don't, someone can point me to our road commissioner job description, I've never seen it.
Maybe something in the orange handbook here. Highway.
Yeah, and again, I wouldn't, yeah, right.
I had-
But in any event, this is, I mean, I'd also argue they're different positions, so.
Oh, sorry, I was just curious.
Oh, yeah, no. And I originally assumed that there was one, but I was never able to find one. So anyway, this is the draft of a building commissioner description. Thoughts?
Well,
like
Brookline
Go
Town,
around
Hall,
and-
that's good. Everybody talking, I got my opinions already.
I mean, I'd say, obviously, I don't expect that we're approving this or finalizing this now, but I think it's a starting point for discussion.
Come on, Joseph.
Bruce, how do you feel? I mean,
I've read it 3 times.
are there things that aren't in it that you think should be,
No.
or things that are that shouldn't be?
No, like I said, I read it 3 times, and you got basically 4 paragraphs there. And I like the first paragraph a lot. Continued sustainability of the buildings, that's excellent. A primary point of contact for anyone renting space in the building, that's a good thing too. He basically acting as almost like the landlord in the behalf of the select board, which is a good thing because that's what I've been doing, basically.
Right.
Answered you guys, but
Right.
doing it in
But
conjunction.
being
The point
the
person.
point person.
The third paragraph is a little bit more involved. The projected cost part, and I don't have a problem with any of that, you know that. Except if you get to really nickel and dime stuff, but, you know, nobody's gonna bitch about, if I go out and spend $25 to get a lock fixed.
No.
Or if I go out and spend $850, you might get a little excited.
Well, and I think I guess what I would say, first off, you had a paragraph not pretty similar to
Too
that
similar to it.
in yours, which is where I got that, yeah.
Uh-huh.
To making
You started that.
aware and available all projected costs and expenses of any work or repairs done to the buildings. I just reworded what was already there. I like it, not so much from the standpoint of it being something that's limiting the building commissioner explicitly, but it is making it clear that the building commissioner is the person who's likely to be paying attention to that
Yeah.
and making the select board aware of it.
Yes.
But then ultimately, like it says, I mean, ultimately the responsibility for spending that money lies with the select board, not with the building commissioner. And it's also geared and towards a time when, with the assumption that we might have, we would have a building commissioner who's not part of the select board
That's true.
and has no connection necessarily to the select board.
Sounds like what
So
I
this
had.
is just sort of, I think, making it clear where the responsibilities are and
The money's
kind of
the money's
formalize
a
it
real
a little
important
bit.
part. And it really is a really important part, that there's clarification and clarity to what the responsibility of the commissioner is in order to explain to the select board and get permission from the select board to move forward.
Right.
Normally, I would say, and I don't know this factually, a commissioner usually has the authority to spend and do it if they please. Maybe this is the wrong wording, Brookline Building Commissioner, but the paragraphs are correct. You see what I'm saying? In other words, to me.
Well, you're right, I don't think
Yeah,
it
I
is
said commissioner would normal-
commissioner. How
Yeah,
about
yeah, maybe it's the wrong word. Commissioner would
maybe
normally say.
supervisor?
Okay, I don't know. Commissioner sound good, I thought, but a commissioner usually means having total carte blanche as to doing all the spending, being in control of the money. Am I wrong in that?
But does it really? I mean, that's not the case with our road commissioner.
Okay,
Well, and I think the thing
I
is,
mean-
that projected, it means, to me, means of anticipated costs. But like you said, that doesn't mean that a key might not break off in a lock, you're not gonna wait till the next select
No.
board meeting to
I've done
whoever this person is, like,
I've done
there
it.
is a little bit of discretion there, so I
Sure.
think there's just it's that balance, and whoever would be in that position would have to have a
Yeah.
close working relationship, but yeah, within all reason, projected costs, and I think everyone who works with the board and has appointed positions does pretty much
Yeah.
do their best to try and be proactive and be presenting and projecting costs when possible.
yeah, if you don't like what the building.
And how the
commissioner goes,
board,
fire him.
right, how the board actually sort of, whatever, not enforces, but what,
Yeah.
I think it's more, unless we're gonna structure something to, off the bat, say that the building commissioner has some discretionary fund that they have free
We did that.
use of.
We did
which
that
I
with the,
doubt we
with the
really-
church.
why
So
would
it said, where's your memory? Wasn't it $500 we let Peter Meyer spend up to $500 because they were doing a bunch of little things in the
I
church?
think that's, yeah, we did.
And we said, okay, discretionary, up to $500, spend away.
Well,
We
right,
trusted him
although
to do it right.
unless I'm mistaken, I don't think that's written anywhere. That's something that you guys
I don't
have
remember.
verbally communicated.
For that situation.
Would be in minutes, but I don't remember.
And I think you could tack an agreement like that onto
Yeah.
this without changing this document. I think
Right.
that this is a really good,
Yeah, I'm
really
happy with
good wording for the job, and then depending on who comes along, if they don't have any affiliation with the select board, we could be like, hey, they
There
may
could be
ask,
policies.
what does it mean, the approval of
Right.
all repairs, when,
good
someone breaks a
clarification.
window at 2 in the morning and I gotta buy some plastic to put up over it. That's when we could be like, okay, you can spend
In these
$500
situations.
in emergency situations without the, you know, that I think all comes after the fact.
Or depending on the relationship and depending on the situation, it may be that there would be a building commissioner or a situation where the select board wouldn't want that person spending anything
Exactly.
without getting
Without
approval.
Exactly,
Yeah, one-
and that's why I think this is really good for this.
So
You have
it-
one problem here in that.
Probably not, but I mean, it could be that way.
In an emergency repair, like when I'm in the process of getting that cleaned up, because I've had 2 instances where Jess has called Jeffers basically just about needlessly. So I'm working on that with Olivia. But I told, basically at that point, I put a stop to it and put myself on call. I did that. So what I told her to do was, don't call me 7 AM, but you can send me an email, because I'm up at 5. I'll be kind enough to put on the damn desktop, and keep an eye, and if I get a message from you that you've got an issue, I can give the approval. They're doing a hair too much on their own when they shouldn't be, and that has to do with that first sentence, where it's going to make aware of the projected costs of any repairs or improvements. That's a repair, if they come and fix the building in an emergency. So we have to keep that in mind as well. So if you have an independent person 5 years from now, okay, can I call Jeffers, or, so that whole idea, maybe the $500 is good in there, but we have to keep in mind that there's gonna be emergency situations.
But again, I mean, no job description, and this is what this is for lack of a better word, no job description is going to cover all flexibility between an employer and an employee. And if we start down the road of trying to specify, then we're also gonna get a document that's only gonna be valid for the one person who does it at that point. And I mean, the reality is there's going to be a discussion and relationship and understanding between the person who's doing it and the select board.
Yeah, maybe I'm
And that's
telling
what
you.
will guide most of the action.
And the
But,
select board picks the
but
person to
this
do it.
is
They trust that
this is
person
the
to do it.
overall concept of the position.
I have no problem with this.
Not,
Yeah, this is the
anything
rule,
way more
but if we start building in every exception, we're
Yeah,
gonna
it
get
was
too
just- too
specific
much
on
in
stuff.
that.
So we just, this is the ideal, good working work day,
Do you
this is
want-
how.
right, and if we needed that level of detail, it would be a totally different kind of situation probably than we can afford to be
I'm good
in.
with this. Just, where's your at with that $500 thing?
It's a good start.
No, I think this is great.
So my suggestion would be, because we're not in any rush to
Do it.
nail this down, I think let's all think on this. I'm gonna put it back on the agenda for the 22nd. I'm not gonna put it on the 8th, because I think we have other
Budget,
things
da-da-da-da.
we need to nail down.
That,
We'll put it back on the agenda
windows.
for the 22nd. We can make any changes and discuss at that point, and then I think we
Go ahead.
presumably
Vote on it.
vote to
Vote on it.
create it, assuming we're all comfortable with that. But we'll review it again on the 22nd.
Fair enough.
Does that make sense to you? Okay.
I found a
Uh-oh.
paragraph
Are you gonna
for,
mess everything up?
well, this might be sort of related in a way.
Clarification maybe?
Yeah, agency assistance to local government definitions. And it says here, in general, the select board is a responsible group for all matters involving highways and bridges. But the charter of a town, city, village may grant exceptions to this rule. In this handbook, the responsible group is called the governing body and may be select boards, trustees, council, or the board of aldermen. Town and city managers and road commissioners may have general and specific authority granted to them, which should be clear to all parties. So I kind of feel it's a similar, you know, this book has all the state standard rules for highways. But what you're doing is, in a way, the select board is has all the answers, but anything a specific appointed person should bring to their attention, and then they make the decision. So like, in my particular position, there's a purchase policy. So in that particular role, there would be a policy that the Commission of Buildings would be able to do those emergencies, if something needed attention in a hurry. Otherwise, it's all brought to the board for revision. So I think it's a similar thing without all the written.
All the extra stuff, like we already said, is too much words.
Okay, cool, so we'll revisit that on the 22nd. Next up is road commissioner. So, we obviously don't have a road commissioner currently, although I really want him to be here for this discussion. He's walked out.
Oh, he's getting a pen because he's sick of me stealing his. Thank you, Bruce.
You can have that one.
Oh,
So,
that's mine anyway.
there's been some expression in the past that a former road commissioner from the town may or may not have expressed interest or willingness to a couple of the board members, I think,
To me.
about doing it again. What I'll say is, unlike the treasurer position, for instance, when our treasurer resigned, we put out notice to the town and posted it and warned it in multiple places that we had taken an action on appointing a treasurer. The reason we did that is because, well, one of the reasons we did that is because that's an elected position that we would not normally be naming the treasurer. In the case of the road commissioner, the select board appoints that position.
Right.
We're under no obligation to solicit anyone who might be interested in being the road commissioner. If we know of someone who is willing to do it and interested to do it, and we're comfortable with that person doing it, we can appoint that person without any other process going on. If we don't know of someone, then realistically, the only thing we can do is to put out word through the listserv and see if there's someone who might be interested in being the road commissioner. I think we need to find someone to be the road commissioner. I've been helping Mark with some things that a road commissioner would do, but I can only do so much of that. And I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have knowledge of enough of this to be particularly useful in that capacity. So, has the person,
No.
have either of you actually spoken to the person?
I did initially,
Uh-huh.
showed interest, said that person said he was also gonna take a look at the building, the school, about painting, and
Yeah,
it
right.
correspond, different issue. Put on my computer, yes, I'm interested in, but I would consider doing it. So I heard from him. And that was, God, it was warm out, September? It was a while ago.
Regardless of lack of hearing from him, I'd be willing to reach out to him again.
Yeah, okay,
Because
why don't you
I
do
think, I
Yeah.
agree, we need a road commissioner. I don't think it's inappropriate for us to go looking for somebody to volunteer for that position. Would you agree with that? Such as reaching out to anyone, saying, hey, would you be interested in being a
But-
road commissioner?
And
Yes,
Yeah, so I'll reach out to him, and I have, one other person. that I
we
was
talk,
going to ask
not
as
to
well.
mention names,
Okay.
we talking the same person again?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
But if that
I
doesn't,
mean, to be honest, I guess I'm not really, I don't, for whatever reason, I guess I didn't wanna, I mean, I'm talking about Tom's stats.
yeah, me too. now that it's come up.
So-
That's it, that story.
I don't know why I was being so, I guess I didn't want to single him out in case he had definitely said,
Hey,
no,
Tom,
I
we're talking
definitely
about
don't want
He
to.
has?
And now we're talking about it.
So I just told you what he said to me.
I think-
But to
I don't think
get
it's the-
anybody.
Well, but,
Yeah.
right, but now I think we're at the point of actually saying we're going to appoint someone. So I think
Okay, ask him again.
before we would do that, we should make sure that
He's willing.
he is in fact willing to do it. And then, yes, if there's anyone else that we know of that we think would be suitable for it and interested in doing it, then the way it would work would be again, I probably would bump it to the 22nd. We'll put it on the agenda for the 22nd. We'll nominate, I mean, if we have more than one person, we'll nominate more than one person, and we'll vote on individuals and appoint someone.
Should we encourage them to be here? I mean, I feel like some of that at the beginning I thought was so odd after town meeting day, we're just like, the restructuring meeting, we're like, oh yeah, we're sure, they kind of said they were still interested. It just seemed really odd that you can nominate, like that you should.
Well, but,
I would just
right, I'll
think
say
it'd be
we
important.
reached out to everyone on that. You didn't, but the
Yeah,
rest
it
of
just
us
seems
reached
like
out
the
to all
rest
of the people and
We checked
verified.
before we nominated.
Well, but I mean, this is a pretty important, I mean, I don't know Tom, like, so I.
Right, I don't
so
either.
It just might be nice if we're gonna appoint them, if we could maybe
Oh, we
encourage
will
them
do that.
to, on that meeting, anyone who's being considered, like, to come and introduce themselves and say hi, like.
Yeah, I think
It's not
that's.
just like a committee thing, it's actually like a,
Yep,
hi, I've never met you, I
Right.
probably have met him, I just
Right.
didn't realize.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah,
I think it's terribly important that you establish what you expect of the road commissioner, who he reports to, and what his responsibilities are, because there seems to be a gray area in that.
Again, if someone can, I mean, all of you seemed surprised when I said I've never seen a job description for the road
Yeah.
commissioner. I guess I would say anyone who thinks there is one, find one and
I think
bring
I
it
have mine at home.
to us.
I believe that's what I copied that off.
Because I'd like to believe
Wasn't that-
that's clarified, some amount of that is clarified.
Oh.
Or maybe we need to revise it if we have one. But yes, I think you're totally right, I think we need to.
Yeah.
We need to make sure we're clear on what, and the person needs to be clear, and Mark needs to be clear on sort of what people's responsibilities are
What the
in
pecking
that
order is,
whole-
and
Right.
in all of the relationship, absolutely.
I agree with Shelby.
Yeah, no,
I think us reaching out to them
Yeah.
is if they're interested, if they
Then,
are interested
yes.
in being
Just please
appointed,
come to that
then we would
meeting.
direct
Yeah,
them
right,
to come to that
right.
meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
Because if we appoint them, then now they're, on the job.
yeah, as at that moment, essentially,
right.
they're on the job,
So
and
they'll
so
get
they
that.
should really
If
just.
they're not willing to come to the meeting,
Yeah.
you know?
But I have a couple people that I'd be willing to, that I'd be interested in asking if they're interested, and if they are, then,
Are they Brookline people?
what was that?
Are they Brookline?
No, they're all from Massachusetts.
I had a couple of Canadians in mind, I don't know about you.
They could be down at somebody's Dutton farm stand for all I know.
No, they're all from Brookline.
Okay, so that's something else that we'll tentatively put on for the 22nd, assuming we have one or more. I mean, I'm gonna put it on the agenda for the 8th, just for us to have a follow-up discussion about.
But we're gonna
As
have
well.
to find decisions here, okay.
We're not gonna decide anything at that point, but we'll at least sort of we'll touch base on potential candidates, or whatever, potential suckers.
Take them.
Let's call them
That's
candidates.
really good to put on tape.
Candidates sounds
Dave.
better.
That was really a good move. That's something you'd expect out of
Everyone
me.
can appreciate that. Okay, so that's it for road commissioner. Moving on to D, town health officer.
We're moving.
Okay,
Rachel's in there.
well, we're an hour behind. No, not an hour behind. Town health officer. I haven't gone through the mail, but I bet we have 6 or 7 more notices from the
Two of them anyway.
Department of Health.
Two of them.
Two of each.
Yeah.
You know, but it went.
So, our town officer or town health officer and assistant health officer, who are sitting opposite me, their terms expire December 31st, 2019. And I am
And they're really
getting the
excited to do it
subtle
again.
impression that neither of them intend to continue in those positions.
Subtle?
I will say that this town health officer at this time is going to represent Brookline
Yes.
by subpoena in a court of law in January.
So then just stay on. I mean, if
Yeah,
you're
like-
already gonna have to go to court.
For what?
For Mr. Britt McLean.
Oh,
Spit subpoena?
I'm gonna be subpoenaed, the district, whatever guy called me, so I'm waiting for the police to show up with my subpoena.
So I guess let me just ask our town health officer, are you willing to continue as health officer after the 31st?
Oh my gosh.
I'm just asking you.
I suppose you can resign effective immediately at any time after this.
After the subpoena,
After the court
Well,
appearance.
let me ask you this.
Well, you might be subpoenaed as an individual because you probably have to go either way. The subpoena is not gonna be transferable to someone who
Correct,
wasn't
so I
involved
don't
in the
have to
situation.
be,
No, you
so
don't have
you
to
can
be.
be the town health officer.
That was a really interesting turn of events there. We're gonna move this back to you for a second.
So let me just ask you to, in like 2 minutes at most, give us a really quick description of the responsibilities of the town health officer.
Town health officer, what I've done in the past is I've gone and walked around people's junkyards. I've walked around and smelt for sewer,
Really sell it to
septic.
us.
I have gone and
This is
drawn water in people's houses and sent it to the state for testing to see if it was polluted when people said that their landlord was providing non-potable water, which wasn't the case. And I think the concern.
And how did you know about those how were those situation complaints from
The,
residents
the,
or
the tenant,
tenants?
the
Okay.
tenant,
And or neighbor.
Yeah.
The neighbor.
and her neighbor. The
Guys.
concern I have again
Non-salary.
is the fact that I'm not
not a good,
really well versed in
Not a good
analyzing septic problems, and I
I'm not
think
gonna
that's a
even
problem
go
that's
there.
going
I
to
am.
rear poison head every
Geez,
summer
sorry.
in a certain Merrill Drive area that, I just don't,
animal control officer
I
is
don't know
out
what to do
$500 a
when
year.
that happens, and
Okay.
Hey guys,
Uh,
can we listen to Dot real quick?
Okay, now what is the role of the assistant health officer,
again,
deputy health officer?
to assist.
To assist. Yeah.
sometimes it's better to have two people than one
Yeah.
going to a place and to do a report or to go to training, and sometimes
Uh-huh.
it's just.
Safety.
If I'm out of town and something,
Yeah.
same thing with
Right.
assistant ACO, which really was what I was initially, is I'm not here 24/7 and 365.
Right.
You need two people on
right.
those jobs.
Okay, so what training is there training that is required in order to be a health officer?
Interesting.
Or merely
Suggested.
training that would be useful in order to be able
There
to
are
do
lots
any
of-
of the stuff that the health officer does?
There's some, well, I was a science teacher, so testing water and that was easy enough for me, but, they have training, some of it's in Montpelier, some of it, we went to training in Brattleboro.
We went to 2 of those.
Two training sessions in Brattleboro, they have it around. You know, Dr. Backus is a health officer in his town, so you see people that you know, but it's,
So they set up a couple of trainings for new health officers, and they give you certain locations, like there was 2 in Brattleboro. We went to one, where was that, Rutland, the first time we went, and it was very educational.
As deputy health officer, are you willing to continue as deputy health
No.
officer after the 31st?
No,
Okay.
I did my 3 years, I'm
Okay.
not comfortable with it myself.
yeah, because as things have changed, the law has changed in that it really can become really cumbersome as far as the type of reporting is done, like with bed bugs and all sorts of things that you can get
Why don't
called
we
in on,
change it?
especially with new rental laws and
I think that should be the
inspections.
case here too.
Like having to go into a rental
Rental bugs,
inspection
You know, guys?
situation. So I'm also concerned about the amount of effort that it's a job. It could be we have a lot of rentals in Brookline.
And you're on call.
The on-call stuff is scary. You're on call, and it's.
I hate to say it, but we gotta start considering this be a salary position like the
Yeah, but
animal.
salary, money's not gonna make it any easier.
I'm not saying it's gonna make it any easier, but working for nothing, with lack of a better word, sucks. And that's a lot of work.
It's
I
a
mean,
little,
would you sign up for it? Would you sign up for it? How about you, all
Well,
working?
what do you mean on call? Like, where's the actual requirement that you are on call? Like
you
somebody calls?
gotta read this, there's a book.
That's what I'm kind of
statutes.
curious. I would like to know that if that's something that if the individual could set boundaries, that's a big.
Obviously, with the dog things, I'm on call too. We're fucking.
But I would also would wonder what your
Heat's not
obligation
working,
truly
the
is.
house, the heat's not working, the water, the septic, the toilets are
Heat's not working.
overflowing.
But again,
Landlord's not.
where's the information on that? I would be curious to.
Right, how do we know what
I'm not
the requirements of
disinterested,
the
I'm
health
actually kind of
officer
like,
are?
when it comes to
Where
like,
is
I have
that
experience
laid
with the tenant landlord stuff.
And
Going past
I
like-
get 12 or
But-
15 emails a
I
day.
can't
Here,
get
That's the newest one.
this is
I
what
just
just
got
got pass this down.
I'm just kind of curious, because that definitely, if the position could look a little different, if there's boundaries to be set, that
Okay,
is very different.
And I'm gonna just say one thing in parting.
Okay. You're not handing it, it's not a passing of the torch, I'm just
No,
going.
I'm just saying, I did it for 3 years, Dottie's done it for 3 years. You made a comment that you need to get different people in, not doing
Yeah.
the same position.
Let me read the book, I can just see what you found here.
But,
Let me ask this, are you willing to continue
Would you share that?
as long as there is a deputy to assist you?
boy, I would.
Or at least for some transitional period where we
Yes.
could get
Yeah.
someone else
I would, in both the
to
dog
understand faster than starting from scratch themselves?
that person will also be my ACO deputy.
Okay,
It's a-
This is becoming a.
so deputy health
Yes,
officer.
Joseph.
Joseph.
Worst case scenario, would you,
Okay.
kind of, rephrasing the question, would you be willing to do it at least until town meeting? Because I feel like that's a place where we could,
Shop
we could, for lack of a better word, beg for someone to do it. And I think that there's probably, if no one is willing to hold that position until town meeting, it falls to the select board, I would say.
Yes, it does.
It does.
Correct.
Yes.
Or at least be a point of, an initial point of contact, and then if you have
If
to,
it's too much.
if you have to delegate it to one of us on the select board, or to the select board to
Or
make a
to
decision.
get some help from the select board,
Or
absolutely.
like-
I think the problem is really going by myself to places. I
Yeah.
don't like it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's unfair, for us to beg you to do it again, because obviously you've expressed that it's a lot of work, and,
People are
so-
not at their best when this is, when they call you.
it's definitely miserable.
And she's been
but
kind
it-
enough to do it.
If you could at least help us out, because you have the experience, until we get to a point where we can
Yeah.
get someone else that's willing to do it, then
I
I think town meeting
apologize, I
would be
think
great.
the reason Dot hasn't called me more often is she knew some of my concerns.
Yeah.
And I don't know why you haven't called to say,
Well, I
come
mean-
with me, I would've.
Joseph, I have a problem, not a problem, but a concern with approach at town meeting. And how many town meetings I've been there where everybody's looking around each other, who's gonna go on the select board? You know, so this isn't gonna be easy.
I don't know, but where else are we gonna bring it?
But but I agree, I'll tell you, I'd be shocked, we could have Julie send out an email asking if anyone's interested in being the town health officer.
But I also
But
think,
that's,
You never know.
I think our chances of appealing to people are much better
in person.
in person at town meeting.
Yeah.
Still not an easy sell, but
We
it's
got Shelby.
But I also do think
more of
on
an option.
that note, okay, Oh, I just like to read, okay? This was just, I
No,
need some
a
bedtime
town
reading,
meeting,
okay?
a town
Okay.
meeting. Hey, then you
I'll-
sit up.
yeah,
Oh, believe me, you'll be asleep.
I'm a sucker. What I think before town meeting, I don't know what are like the listserv, I keep thinking about how, and I don't know if you guys do this, you might have done this in the past, so that may be why I'm thinking about it, but, sending out an email of all of the positions. I know they get the town report, I know they can look at the expiration dates, but
Right.
sending out a little recap email for maybe people who don't sit, for whatever reason, don't read it, and just be like, hey, if you were at all interested in swinging by, reminder about the new time and day, and here are some of the positions that are gonna be available this
Right.
year if you're interested in trying,
help the town.
to participate in the town. And then that way they're not looking at this long list of
And
stuff
for
that
new
might not be
people, too.
new people who've moved here, maybe
They
they're.
may not be in the listserv either.
They might not be,
Right.
but it might get
Yeah.
that kind of chatter going while we're trying to kind of just get more attention around town meeting. I know, you guys have tried, it happens, but maybe just, that
Okay.
could be, if we don't
And I
have
would
this figured out, we could
suggest,
slip
if
that in
you
there.
wanna take that on of drafting what
that.
we would do, I think
I
that's a
can
great
draft like an
idea.
email.
And I guess I'd also ask if you, now that you have the copy in front of you, if you could take on just
Yeah,
trying
I'll
to
review it,
define
yeah.
what the actual
Job is.
What
job
parameters
is,
we can
what the
set, yeah.
responsibilities are and what we might be able to,
I'll forward,
how we would set it. If you can work on that,
Yeah.
that would be great.
I can do that.
Shelby, I'll forward you some of the communications from other town health officers
Yeah.
that
Chatter.
we get. It's very interesting,
I still read
I'm gonna
those.
read that before bed though.
very
Yeah,
interesting.
right, you bet. I'm sure it's awesome.
What's it else?
That's all right,
Yeah.
I'm good. Okay, so we will,
Work. Read my book.
let's revisit that in a couple of meetings, and see,
See how the subpoena takes it?
yeah, exactly, right.
Again, that's gonna be specific to Dot though, not to.
I had a teacher
They
in
don't
college,
subpoena
Dot,
a-
which
a
is
position.
pencil
John
like
says
this.
we're not compliant with any of the securities, so.
Right, though it was in her capacity as town health officer, so that's not a private, I mean, you are subpoenaed under that, so. That's something to recall, that anything that happened while you were doing that was as you were representing the town as town health officer. So,
Yes,
you have,
condolences.
well, and
Maybe so.
you have legal backing of the town.
Pretty much, except for the appropriations.
Okay, next up is E, the Deer Run Nature Preserve Letter of Support.
Looks good,
I scribbled something up.
looks good. You covered all the bases, David.
That's mine.
Should have my copy.
You did a good job.
Anybody have anything you don't like about it that you want me to change?
No, not me.
All right, then I would make a motion that we approve, sending along this letter of support to the Green Mountain Conservancy. Is there a second?
I second it in light of the fact that you covered all the bases.
Okay, all those in favor of sending this letter of support to the Green Mountain Conservancy signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so I'm gonna send this to them tomorrow, along with the planning commission's letter, which they've already drafted. I've been holding on to.
Budget plan.
Budget planning, okay, this should be quick.
Yes, I love that.
Because, so you have two things in front of you. You have an updated worksheet,
Yeah.
which is updated 12/18/19.
That's one of the ones that I don't believe I got.
And you have an
I
updated
set it on top of your desk. Your
appropriations.
pile there.
I don't, if you,
Unless somebody took it.
Someone took it.
oh my God, somebody slipped me this one, so if you need
All right,
it.
there you go, maybe that's yours.
Thank you.
You have this and also an updated appropriation list, which is already out of date because there was another one that we found. First, let's just hit on a couple of things. We were all in agreement on all of the numbers that we put in on the worksheet, so we don't need to go through everything again, but I want to highlight a couple of things because I did make two changes from last time. Guy got a more detailed breakdown of the insurance, the VLCT insurance cost. costs for the calendar year of 2020, which is about to start. Based on that, I still assumed an increase for the next budgeted year, although they bill on a calendar year, so every one of their bills is half of one fiscal year and half of another. But even assuming an increase, I lowered our estimated expenditure for insurance slightly by like $500, split between the highway and the operations budget. That, and I then went back and retotaled everything, so just so people know where we're at.
What was your number?
We're now net, our expenses for the general fund were down $109 from last year. That of course includes the increase in NEMRIC and all that other stuff.
But the VLCT, he's changed that, you said?
Yeah, I changed the insurance.
So it's not 1723 or what I just saw?
It's what it is on the sheet that I just gave you.
Okay,
Yeah, that's reflected in this.
okay.
I only lowered it, not a lot. I lowered it about $500, I believe, collectively. So we're down, as this stands, we're $109 below last year's expenditures, budgeted expenditures on the general fund, and $730 below last year's expenditures on the highway. Coupled with the fact that we have budgeted a little over $1,000 over on revenues for the general fund, that ends up sort of net for all these things being a little under $2,000 effectively below last year.
So the last,
That's not including appropriations
Right.
or recycling or
That's
any
right.
specially warned articles. That's merely on the strictly budgeted.
Right.
Just like
and
last year.
both numbers.
Like last year.
The last year's number you're using is the pre-town meeting number, pre-appropriations, pre-recycling, right?
Yeah, because appropriations gets warned separately every year.
Yeah, okay.
So it's the rolled up operation and highway number that we warn as its own article.
Okay, last year versus this year.
Last
Cool.
year versus this year,
So we're under in both respects. Not a huge amount, but nice.
I am going to meet, the other thing that I'll just throw out there, because though it's not relevant, it's not particularly relevant to this. Depending on how the audit goes, and Samara, I'm gonna come meet with Sarah and Samara next week about this to see where they're at in preparation for the audit. We may well, hopefully, have still ended up with a surplus from fiscal year 19. We will then, if that's the case, then we'll have a discussion on the 8th of what we do about that. But it's premature to know whether that's the case. But I think there's a decent chance that that is the case. So that's this, so this is updated, and as far as I'm concerned, our final ones before the treasurer and the auditor plug in all their stuff. Okay, now let's move to the appropriations. So thank you, Guy, for all of the groups that you reached out to get follow-up from those. You'll see on this that we did get an appropriation, and the letters are printed out and are in here now. We got appropriations requests for $250 again from the American Red Cross.
That was today, when I saw an email, I didn't read.
Yeah, it just came in. We, though it's not reflected on this sheet, we did get a letter from the Leland and Gray Foundation, which I'd actually like everybody to read
Okay,
before we discuss that.
okay.
We got a request from Sevka for $465 again, which we had not received last time, but we have received it now.
Okay,
We got a request for $500 from the Wyndham County Humane Society, which we had not received before, but we did receive now. It's worth noting that in all those cases, those were genuine, well, the American Red Cross thought they had sent us one. At least in the case of the Humane Society and Sevka and Leland and Gray, they had not sent them to us. Until we reached out to say, are you sure you don't want it? And then they all kind of reacted that, oh gee, sorry, we're way behind. And they said,
We get, sorry, two.
we, of course, as we discussed last time, we have the new requests from the Southern Vermont Therapeutic Riding Center and from Winston Crowdy. And we still have to decide, we had a little bit of discussion last time about what to do with those, and we should finalize what we want to do with those.
Didn't we always in the past, if there was new requests for new appropriations, have to have the town vote on it?
Select board presents.
Only if,
Oh.
yeah, and what we've done, at least in the case.
You have to present it.
Right. I know in the case of, for instance, the Southern Vermont Therapeutic Riding Center, they sent us an appropriation request at least last year, if not the year before. At the time, that board, we decided not to even suggest funding that to the town. So it was not included as a separately warned article. Shelby brought up the point last time that, and I don't want to speak for you, but that she thought perhaps the better thing to do would be to put it to the town for the town to decide whether we may think it's a good idea or not. And I think she also expressed some positive things in her opinion about the Southern Vermont Therapeutic Riding Center and why they might justify being funded.
I'm also just not so sure. I'm not a huge appropriations fan in general. So that was more, I think, just me trying to think, like, procedurally in my head, like, you know, like, well, shouldn't all new ones just go to the town? It's community, I mean, it's the community who, I mean, I know it's our responsibility or whatever, but like, basically we're making donations with the taxpayers' money on their behalf. So they should just, I just feel like they should be able to see all the appropriations that come in and decide for themselves that they don't wanna donate. I mean, because that's literally what these are, they're donations with taxpayer money.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think.
I mean,
go ahead.
I donate to causes on my own.
As I suggested last week, that once you have a real strong appropriations policy, that will kind of filter out some of the stuff that you have to present to the public. Because the select board does have the ultimate decision, but if someone wants to get 5% of the voters to petition something, they can do that. So, you know, there's different ways, but I think in appropriations, you know, down the road, because it's not gonna matter this year, but in the next year, if you have a strong appropriations policy, and the one I sent to David, I sent two of them actually, one from VLCT and one from another town, it will pretty lay out much what's best for the town. How an appropriation affects the town itself.
Right. I mean, I think, and I know you're not saying this, but to sort of take it to a extreme, you know, I think we've historically felt that part of what the townspeople have elected us to do is to make some of these decisions. And where there's history of the town having supported things, it's different. That presumably there was analysis that went into that before it was suggested to the town in the first place as well. But that isn't to say that's the only way it could be done. I also think not that there's a perception, not that this couldn't be explained to people, but I think there's probably a perception that what is warned as an expense and appropriation in the warning is something that we as a board are suggesting should be done. And then the townspeople are voting whether they agree or disagree with that. So the premise has always been, we're only putting forward appropriations that we as a board agree should be considered in the first place. You know what I mean? Again, doesn't mean that's the only way it could be done and it couldn't be clarified differently, but
So we decided to do Leland Gray
so
Foundation?
let's just do this. Let's take, I mean, for the moment, let's put the new ones aside and
Yeah.
let's just discuss and make sure we're all on the same page about the ones that we didn't have previously, okay? So the first one is the American Red Cross. We received officially a request for $250 again from the American Red Cross. Is anyone opposed to supporting that? Or are we all in agreement that that's one we should keep in? Okay. Leland and Gray Educational Foundation. Did people have a chance to read this?
Yes.
Am I the only one who doesn't see them actually ask for anything
That's
in
not a
this?
request for funds.
This isn't a request, right? I mean, I don't
It's not
want
even an
to.
Thank
appeal
us for
letter,
last
it's a
year.
thank you letter.
It's a thank you letter from last year, for last year's.
And when
So,
did that come to you?
just within the last couple of days.
That's kind of odd.
Well, that's because we call them and that's how we usually,
Yeah, I called Peter twice because it's his
So, I
brother.
mean,
Right.
It's hard because it's not even an open-ended appeal, like they don't even have a sentence in there that says, and we'd appreciate any continued support
Right.
this town meeting day, like there's no
right,
even tail in there for us to like
Isn't that odd?
right.
grab onto.
It's like they found an old letter and community grafted and sent it.
Yeah, maybe he tapped the wrong button and sent it.
Boy, that's a
Well,
hard.
Do we
This-
need to
this
have a
guy's
request in
here.
order to,
Because he was
to
quick
recommend
to
appropriation?
respond,
We,
and I think he sent the wrong header in there. Just my opinion.
we have always, in the past, again, because we don't have a formalized
Yeah.
policy, it's probably not strict, but in the past, we've always, I believe, or at least while I've been on board, we've taken the approach that unless we have an actual request,
Yep.
we're not going to suggest, because how do we really know for sure that they want the money? I mean, I'm sure they
Well-
probably
Or that
do,
the
but, you
foundation's
know,
still going.
or they, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So given our timing and given that we're already at the end of December, I don't consider this a request because it doesn't actually ask for it. I would suggest that we do not include the Leland and Gray Educational Foundation in this. Someone can bring it up at town meeting and
That's the vote.
suggest that it be added then.
That's the route.
That's perfectly acceptable for people to do.
I,
Are people in agreement with that, or?
we're not kicking them out the door, we're letting the town decide.
Yeah, we tried. I think that it is mildly inappropriate for us to
Overstep.
appropriate money to someone who
With
did
that
not.
kind of
There's not
request.
even
explicitly
one
ask for money.
sentence in that.
Yeah,
letter that
right.
says
Let the
that.
Right.
town decide,
Yeah.
I don't, yeah.
we're sticking our necks out.
Okay,
I'll agree with that.
okay, so we're all in agreement with that. Sevka did submit a request for $465 like they have the last several years. Is anyone opposed to that appropriation?
No, I guess,
Okay.
Southeast Vermont Community Action.
And then the last new one was Wyndham County Humane Society, who did submit a request for $500, as they have every year. Is there anyone opposed to that
what is
appropriation?
that?
Um,
Oh, I found it.
Third one from Bob.
Yeah.
Yep.
No,
Okay, so now let's discuss, well, so separating the new ones out, because they would be separated
we have
out.
what, two, David?
That would mean, just so people sort of have a check of where we would be, that would bring our total appropriations that we would be warning as part of the rolled up appropriation article to 6406, which presumably is $250 less minus the additional
Yeah,
$19.50 or whatever it was that we increased more free library. So that's the number that the appropriations would be warned at. Any new ones would be separate articles on their own for the amounts that we warn them at.
uh-huh.
Okay.
250. But even with the two here, it still only comes to 6406 because we didn't approve the 250.
No, the
Well,
64
that's-
at the bottom doesn't include the two.
Yeah, it doesn't include, I had a note that
doesn't
got
include
cut
new
off
ones?
when I printed it out. It does not
Okay.
include the new ones. This
Okay.
is excluding those. This is
Okay.
just for the we'll
The
call
ones
them
above.
ongoing
Yep.
ones,
Okay.
ongoing appropriations. All right, I mean, what do people feel about the therapeutic? I mean, I'll say I am personally still do not see a significant local benefit to the therapeutic riding center and would not support that appropriation personally.
Seems like a substantial amount of money.
Yeah, I think it's high, even though I obviously like them. I'm just more, I guess I just wish we had more clarity on how to handle appropriations in general. I really kind of don't have an opinion about these individually. If we wanna leave them out, we wanna leave them out for this year. I think that with taxpayer money and the donation, these are donations, I just feel like we should have some kind of way, so it's not just up to whether or not we think something's relevant, or if that's, or what our criteria is, or if it is gonna be up to that. I just think it needs to be clear to the town that we don't show them all the appropriations necessarily. I don't know, the whole appropriation thing just messes me up. I don't care if we leave out Southern Vermont Therapeutic Riding or Winston Prouty necessarily.
Well, I think.
I'm not gonna argue with either way, so if
I
everyone's
think
fine
the
with it, I'm
therapeutic
fine.
riding is a good benefit, maybe because I'm such a horse person. And I've seen the results for kids that it really makes a difference for those with handicaps. And I think the town should be the one that says, yes, we're willing to do this or not. I think the town should vote on it.
Yeah.
I
agree.
personally think the town should vote on it.
It's a new appropriation, it's not on the list. You guys want it on the list?
Where is the riding center?
The woman is.
Yeah, and it's just, there's like one in the county.
Yeah, it used to be at Mercedes Farm.
Yes, they do.
Joseph, what's your, I mean, I'm not saying we're necessarily strictly voting on this, although I guess ultimately maybe we are.
Yeah.
I would say that, I agree, we need a structure of how we
Yeah.
do these appropriations. We should definitely get that together for next year.
Absolutely.
Because we don't have that, we should continue doing it the way we've done previously, and so I just think
Yeah.
we should take a vote on how we feel. Personally, I would say that I would probably vote against giving them the money, and I understand that that's a slightly different issue than whether we should bring this up in front of the town or not.
Right.
Well, I think I agree with Shelby, 500 seems a lot when some of the ones that are really important are only asking for 200.
Exactly, and I think because of kind of the way that this is structured, we're not gonna, they asked for 500, so we'd have to warn that separately.
Yeah.
Therapeutic asked for
Yeah.
500, and it's just going straight to the town, and it gets voted. The reality of it, it's gonna get voted up or down. We're not really gonna adjust that price. And just looking at everything, personally, I would say that we should.
Could be done.
My personal opinion would be to go the way that we've gone the last several years, leave it out this year, and then really look at
Not all
a.
new ones, like I said,
weren't?
therapeutic riding center
that's
gave us an
true.
appropriation request last year.
Well, I agree,
And we
I,
as a board
I
at the
think-
time decided
all
not
right,
to
in that
suggest
case,
it.
then I think maybe leave it off, because I think 500 is a little high, when some of the other ones that we know are a really good benefit
So
are
you're,
not even that high.
so you're suggesting just to leave Winston Prouty as the only one that
We haven't got to Winston
I
Pratt.
know,
Yeah,
but
let's-
I'm making a point, and the point is, we start getting in the weeds too much with this, we're gonna be just
Yeah.
forever at town meeting with this and that, and this and that. So we need to tighten it up a little bit,
I
I
think
think.
leave
I
them
think
both.
Joseph's idea, I
Can't
think
do
I'm
one
starting
and
to
not
go
the
that
other.
way.
If you could
Well,
look it up.
we could, and we have in the
Percentage rate
past.
of how much it benefits Brookline
That's what we were
Right.
discussing.
I think that's
Right.
I think that's an intangible. I think
And that
any of
goes-
these
that
are
goes for
different.
all
things,
the
but,
appropriations, some are 100%, some are,
Less.
but how much does it add to them?
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, I will say, the more we've discussed this, the more I am turning my opinion to the idea that we should put both of these to the town. And what I'd say is that if, my opinion now, that I think, that I've sort of thought it through more, is that I do feel that if we're going to put something forward to the town, we put forward what they requested. Either we're going to, I think, either we do a filter on it and say we don't think that this is the cause that we can, as a town, afford to support, or we let the townspeople decide. I don't think we can have it both ways of saying, I think it's something that the town should decide, but I think we should only suggest $100 for them.
Well, and they can amend
that
the
that's-
article.
The townspeople can amend the article.
And that's, I mean, I remember that's happened every
Yep.
year I've gone, they've amended over
Yep.
different dollar amounts. Cause it could be that it's important to a small group of people, and the only way to get it passed is for that small group to say, how about $50? You know what I mean, like, that can be worked out
Yeah.
between people if they express an interest, or maybe if they put forward and no one's interested.
Yeah,
And-
so I'm gonna make a motion, actually, so that we can just decide this.
okay.
Well, for the most part, decide it. I make a motion that we suggest through separate articles within the warning, or that we propose through separate articles in the warning the requested appropriation from the Southern Vermont Therapeutic Riding Center and the requested appropriation from Winston Prouty.
As separate articles.
Yeah, they would each, the way we would do it
One and two.
is each would be a separate article. There'd be an article for Therapeutic Riding Center, $500, an article for Winston Prouty, $250.
Got it.
Is there a second to that motion?
Okay, I'll go with that.
Bruce
Second.
seconds the motion. Okay, so let's discuss that.
Let's do it, I mean.
I don't know
We
if
can't
suggest or propose. Is there-
Well, they're gonna be warned as an article.
Yeah,
Can I
so it won't be coming across as,
Well,
your point earlier.
My point earlier, I
Yes.
think, stands,
I
that
agree.
I would believe that many people would see that as us suggesting it, but
We should be very clear that we're just presenting them with the
Yes.
Well, I
appropriations
think
that were
it is
requested of the
written
town, and it's up to them to
Yeah.
decide. We're not
That way, and
these
that?
groups
isn't it
one way or
written that
another.
way?
it is.
These are new appropriations. Have we actually put new
Oh, yes, we,
appropriations
absolutely,
in the appropriation
absolutely.
list? And just put it in the list and just say, here you are, town?
No, we
No.
put it as an article.
We put it as an article.
Yes, we did.
Of course,
As an article.
of course, there weren't any.
We gotta do it, we should do it that way, we should continue.
Let me grab it.
Down the road.
Anyway, I remember there was
Like
emergency
Joseph
point
said.
rescue.
Yeah, it was a specific article,
It's a specific article, that's how
and
we
they did it
voted on
because it wasn't a regular.
Right, I figured I'd keep it that way, we can't go through this, especially $750, almost up to $1,000.
Well, and unfortunately, I don't think we're necessarily.
What's it
I
called,
think it's
Winston Prouty,
Winston Prouty,
what, just this, Winston Prouty?
just Winston Prouty.
Could you just refresh my memory, what did you do with Project Feed the Thousands? Is that,
Nothing, we got no request from them.
oh, okay.
Feed the bye-bye.
For the Townsend Food Shelf, we got no request from them this year or last year.
You know, one thing that
It's just Winston Prouty.
I think maybe,
Southern Vermont Therapeutic Riding Center.
Sorry,
this is
Joseph.
just brainstorming, but when we discuss this at the town meeting, they're gonna vote on those two new articles. We can mention something along the lines of that we will be drafting and voting upon parameters for future appropriation requests.
Now,
Right, and hopefully we may have even done it at that point.
we have a point there, Joseph, but,
Yeah,
I
so,
don't think, such a great idea.
Here's the wording from a
Your way
couple of
works.
them. and
Okay, go ahead.
This is the
Your way
wording
works
from
as
a
far as
couple, from 2016.
so two things to note. The article that all of the other appropriations are part of says, shall the town voters appropriate X amount of money to be raised by taxes in continuing support of the following organizations.
And we read them all.
Only read them all.
Then any new ones say, shall the town voters approve a new appropriation in the amount of X amount of money for whatever the organization is. So,
It's the best
I
way.
don't really think
I'm
that
pulling away from the
people
Joseph.
can reasonably
I don't think we should
that-
change it. I think that's the way that works.
Well,
That's my opinion. You, Guy?
yeah,
I'm comfortable with that for this year.
that's, the splitting hairs part of it is that historically, or at least while I've been on the board, we've only warned those if we as a group thought that they were worth suggesting to the town.
Not
We-
just because they were received.
Not just because we received, we didn't just put whatever we
Right.
received.
It was rare, Doc.
Wasn't there one that was like asking for like $1,500?
Yeah,
Yeah,
somebody,
that was the,
somebody, we
is that the business bureau or
we
the?
haven't gotten that one.
But it's rare, but I remember once or twice where we just kind of disallowed it because it was like you were saying, ridiculous.
Right, and like I say,
That's our
I
job.
can go back and.
$3 or $4 per person per capita.
Yeah, they assess each person.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, I was like.
Right.
What? We felt pretty confident.
I'm
the
on
town was
board
gonna-
with your motion.
Yeah, I think we should
I think
vote.
it makes sense, and I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah,
yeah,
let's
especially,
move on.
yeah, because
We
I
need to
think
move on.
especially that,
It's getting late.
that might be what I think would be a.
Are you gonna maintain the same figure that they've asked for, or are you gonna reduce it?
No,
My motion is for the same figure that
this
this
is
is.
what they're asking
What
for.
do you Mr. Crowley
What do you all
think?
think?
Because I very strongly believe that if we think we need to change the amount,
Yeah.
then we need to decide if we, either we're passing, this is a bad way of describing it, either we're passing the buck for deciding to the town, or we're not doing a hybrid.
We're passing the buck.
Okay, so any other discussion on that? Okay, so all those in favor of warning separate articles for the new appropriation requests from the Southern Vermont Therapeutic Riding Center and from Winston Prouty as part of the town meeting warning, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Signify by saying aye.
Aye. Did kind of
Opposed?
scratchy, but we'll go for it.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that's what we'll do.
Got it.
So Winston Prouty, you know.
Okay, let's move.
250.
250.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's it with the budget for now.
Okay. Yeah, so just so everybody's on the same page, when we get to the meeting on January 8th, we will have before us the complete town meeting warning with all of the articles, hopefully. Hopefully we won't have to come up with any more. There will be one, because we've decided this, there will be one for recycling. We may have to have some discussion on what amount we want to warn for that. But we'll word the wording,
All that day.
we'll word the warning the same way we worded it last year, but we'll have a discussion about what the amount should be.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
You're gonna put
Okay,
that on the 8th? You have to.
that'll be on, we have to do it on the 8th, yeah. Okay, Guy, how you doing?
Dave,
I'm doing well.
can I butt in on the budget before guys start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
I just had a thought here, and it may be budget related. If we're possibly checking into purchasing equipment, and have we put any thought into finance of it? I know that there's the municipal equipment
Yeah, the
funding.
state treasurers.
In Vermont, and I just happened to catch the applications in the Orange Handbook here, and they only
Fall and
loan
spring,
out up to 110,000,
right?
and
You have to put 20% down.
we have to have a down deposit. And
Yep.
are we,
We have money, we've been putting away $3,000, $4,000
So the down payment, when I did this last year, we had sufficient funds to do the down payment
Okay.
predicated on the $88,000 price tag. So the down payment, I don't remember what it was, $16,000 or $17,000, which we had money in the account, so it wouldn't really change anything. And that was
So-
usually.
I just didn't want it to disturb the budget if
Right.
they do go accordingly, and if they don't, we're all set, but
Well, and it's entirely possible, I suppose, after you guys have the meeting and whatever gets suggested and whatever the amount is and all that, I suppose it's possible that we may be needing to make some changes to something on the 8th. But we'll cross that bridge if and when we come to it. But I think the assumption is that we wouldn't be doing that. And honestly, if there was financing or money involved in the purchase of that, my assumption would be that we would all agree that that would be part of what we would be warning as the article for purchasing this thing in the first place, and not necessarily building it into the budget for this first year.
okay.
Because it doesn't really make sense for us to, let's say we thought financing it or whatever was gonna cost us an additional $20,000. It doesn't make sense for us to budget $20,000 for something that the voters might vote down.
Sure, yeah.
It makes sense to build that into the cost of the article that's being
Yeah.
warned for the first year. Moving forward, you then budget for
Yeah,
it,
because
once
you
it's
have-
something
Once you know your
but-
payments and so
Right.
forth.
Right.
But it's a good point,
Okay.
Guy, what's going on from a town clerk standpoint?
I just wanted to run this past you. I'm getting a little shy about submitting vital reports. Every year we put in the town report, dates, names, date of birth, day of death and so forth. And with cybersecurity being what it is and all the things going on, a lot of towns, and I have an email to Garrett Baxter, and I was hoping for a response before tonight, but he hasn't yet, to see where I presented a so-called scenario that I would like to put in the report, saying that because of cybersecurity, we will not be listening to the vital statistics, but they are public record. You can come into the town office and you can look at them on our regular days of business. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, but when you put a child's birth down and the date he was born and everything else, you're giving them a lot of information. When a person passes away, you're giving them a lot of information. When a person is married, you're giving them a lot of information. And cybersecurity is such that they're suggesting you don't do that. So, when I get a letter from...
One less page in the...
Yeah, well, when I get the response from Garrett, I will share it with you, and then you as a team can say, okay, this is what you think we should do and what we shouldn't do. I just want to keep a town out of a legal situation.
Yeah, you want that.
Okay, yeah, no, it's good. I mean, I saw some of your email about that, and yeah, I mean, I think it's...
And other than that, it's been, we've been really busy. It seems like the end of the year, people are trying to tie up all loose ends. We've had a lot of recordings, a lot of different things, a lot of action in the office, title searches and so forth. So that's it, but everything's going along well.
Okay.
Thanks, Guy. Mark, what's going on with you?
Well, we just reordered another load of salt from American Salt Company, and the salt was here within 5 hours.
Jeez.
And the guy apologized for being late.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, what took them so long?
Really?
I
Did he trip?
believe he made a trip to Stratton Mountain Ski Area first, and
And
then,
he apologized?
That's funny.
but, yeah, they're very prompt.
That's great.
Jeez.
And we also, due to the weather, we also used up a fair amount of sand, so the sand was replenished to the shed as well. So we now have plenty of sand, plenty of salt for the next, that load of salt, the first load of salt, actually just about 1 month before we used the majority of it.
Okay.
How many tons was that? Do you have a ballpark figure?
30.5 ton
Okay.
on that. And that was the exact same as the first load as well. So stayed pretty consistent, same truck driver, same trailer. The other thing, we had some wind and again, more dead debris coming out of trees, did some cleanup. We had a rainstorm here over the weekend, starting at the end of last week, and as it persisted due to snow melting and just the volume of rain, we had one water issue in town. Archie was plowing and salting, and he called to tell me that water was crossing the road on Hill Road. So I hurried over to Brookline, and sure enough, there was a clogged culvert on the driveway of Jimmy Rogers. There's two culverts on his crossing his driveway, and they're a couple hundred feet off the road, I would guess. And so the water was jumping the bank before the culverts, coming out onto the highway, down the road, and back into the brook on each side. And where the water was going back into the brook, it did some erosion and ate a hole right side guardrail down to the box culvert. So I addressed the problem. I took small quantity of stone, approximately football size, and filled the hole so that it didn't undermine the pavement. But this has occurred a couple of times, so it's something that should probably get addressed in the future, and I'm not sure yet without talking about it and pursuing different things, because the issue starts outside of the town right away. I have no authority to go and fix the problem, and so we may have to address the landowner or person using the driveway. But it's if nothing else, in the summertime, I feel that in the town right away can be trenched enough to, if this happens again, the water will avoid the pavement and turn back into the brook before it causes any problems. The only problem with that is the snowbanks. The snowbanks is what also kept the water coming out into the road. It couldn't eat through under compacted snowbanks, so it came out, and it was like a foot deep over the road and pulling debris. And I did go and look at the culverts. One of them seems to be working. I think there was some ice, some debris, some woody debris, some rocks. I think it's a couple culverts put together that aren't lined up right. There's some damage to them. So at some point, these continue. The time before, it did erode under the road and collapse the pavement. We had to do repairs at the town's expense. One time was the Beaver Dam blowout. Another time was Irene. So it's a reoccurring issue that I will talk to, Dave or the board or whoever, the road commissioner, and try to put a little effort into a correct fix for that.
Have we ever, and do we think that in the past when this stuff has happened, was it all because of the same issues up the road?
Well, some of it is just plain high water.
Right.
There is two culverts. If the two culverts were new, working properly, they would take more water. And what it is, there's a stream that comes down parallel to the driveway, and then a 90-degree turn into these two culverts. And if the culverts can't handle the volume of water,
Yeah.
it jumps the
Jumps
bank and goes out and then crosses the driveway and out into Hill Road.
Oh.
So sometimes it's just water volume, and you know, the fact that they can't handle the volume at that point. Like right now, when the water table is somewhat on an average, the one culvert is keeping up, but you know, there's two there, and the one's not really doing much to pass water. So.
It's been an issue that, the culverts have been in disrepair for some time. And, although in the case of the Beaver Dam or Irene, I don't think that even if the culverts were in perfect working order, it would have stopped water from jumping the bank. In a situation like this, a working culvert would absolutely stop it. And ditching it in the summer would solve much of the issue, as Mark pointed out, but it would not solve the issue in the wintertime, because as the driveway comes in, they're gonna push their snowbank into the ditch, which would in effect be the overflow of this culvert, and so it would go right into the road as it did this time. So I think that possibly we should contact Jimmy Rogers, and I would say if any vote comes along, I feel as though I might need to recuse myself from such vote, because the land is owned by my family, and it's Jimmy Rogers' right-of-way that is his driveway up in there. They're his culverts. It's his right-of-way. But I do think that it's an issue that could cause some damage and some expense to the town, and it's in his best interest as well as obviously the town's he's gonna have to fix those culverts eventually, and maybe if we requested that he did so and point out to him that this could cost the town a good amount of money, he might, who knows how he'll respond, but he might fix his culverts sooner rather than later.
Hmm. Have we had situations like this before with other things outside of our right-of-way that? It's the first I've ever heard of something like that come up, so I just don't know.
I can't
how we've
recall
dealt with it in
anything
the past.
immediate that comes to mind. I know there were some tree issues that tipped over and just the tops came into the road. The trees were, 80 feet out of the town right away, or 60 feet out of the town right away. So I was able to lop them off and take the brush out of the right of way in the town road, but I couldn't go onto the property to remove the tree. So as far as I talked to the A&R guy. He's the one you get permission to work in a waterway, a brook, or anything.
Mhm.
And I asked him his opinion, what can I do to resolve this problem? He says there's nothing, you can't go outside your right of way, there's no authority, no fix. I can't go fix those culverts.
Right,
Mhm.
I can only adjust what's on the town right of way.
yeah.
And so do we, do we think merely fixing the culverts would solve all of the problems? That's it?
That's
It's replacing the
in
culverts with either bigger or better working or whatever
absolutely, yeah.
culverts?
Other
Is it
than
more than one culvert?
It's two. It's two, one side by side. They're like I'm gonna guess without measuring them, they're like a 3-foot diameter.
Oh, boy.
There's two of them, one side by side.
So one's on the right of way and one is not.
No, they're both side by side out of the right of
Oh,
way.
out.
Yeah.
it's two culverts in lieu of one larger culvert.
Yeah.
So you know how sometimes they'll put they'll put two culverts right next to each other, they're touching each other,
Oh.
so you don't have to put one large culvert.
Yeah, there wasn't height enough to do one big
do one big
culvert,
one.
so they did two smaller ones to accept
Okay,
the
got it.
volume. But only, both of them aren't working to their maximum. One is worse than the other.
It's always gonna be sort of a danger issue in the event of a massive flood. So yeah, if Hurricane Irene comes in again, regardless if there's good culverts there, it might hop the bank. But in every other situation than your, 100-year flood, working culverts there would solve the issue.
Okay. I don't know for the moment what we do.
Yeah, I don't think we have a fix for tonight, I just wanted to explain that.
And I guess, do we think logistically, is this the kind of thing that could even be fixed before the spring?
With the ground froze and the lack of stability, letting things firm back up, I don't think it would be able to be fixed until, summertime, properly. I mean, you may be able to, if you could get crushed stone and a new culvert, possibly, but I just don't feel it's the right time of year to install a culvert.
Yeah, no,
Emergency,
that's fine.
yes, there's gotta be a way to fix an emergency, but to do a proper installation, I would think you'd need dry weather. And it's a, it's a fair-sized little brook that, quite a bit of water volume to deal with. You need a permit
All right, so it's something to pay attention to, and I guess I'd say, Mark, is just if you can, because I would think ultimately we need to know exactly what we're saying needs to be done,
Yeah,
or what we would
You know,
suggest to the,
I don't know who the right person to contact, but if there was a continuing problem that was affecting the town roads, there may be something that could be done to, make the abutting landowner assist in helping.
right, but at the starting point is deciding what it is that needs to be done. And so I guess if we can just sort of make sure we're kind of clear on exactly what we think needs to be done, then we can start to figure out what we do about it and who we contact about it.
See, now, a lot of times, if we're replacing a culvert of that size, you have to contact the state, and they've got a water study, hydraulic study, to tell you what size culverts, maybe those are undersized. They'll tell you what they want you to put in.
So definitely a lot of research to
Yeah.
work on this later.
Yeah, I don't think anything you'd wanna rush into with that, getting the right permits and planning.
Cool, all right.
And then, the other thing was Dave, was kind enough to assist with, all the paperwork for the Better Back Road Grant, which the deadline ended, on Friday, and we were able to both gather up enough information to send that on its way, and it was received, and there'll be eventually we'll hear back whether we are awarded or not after they check it out. So that's basically all I have for tonight.
Cool, thanks, Mark. Okay, moving on to communications, a couple of emails about a survey which, if everyone's in agreement, I will go on and complete. And then also just the heads up about the Wyndham Regional Commission hosting that broadband meeting in January, which I think I'm gonna try to go to. And they are gonna want us to do some stuff after it. And then regular mail, these are all old things. lot of old things. I won't even bother passing around the town health officer and deputy health officer reminders that we have somebody else. We have people that need
Wasn't
to
there a
be
date that
furloughed.
had to be done on that though?
I don't know, I'll look at them later.
December 31st is the,
It's a watershed information to include in our town report, which it won't go in the town report, but we'll photocopy it. The Wyndham Solid Waste Management District with the assessment for the year, which is what
Oh, boy.
I said it was going to be. And the letter from, this is a hard copy, which I think we had an email. This is the SEVCA appropriation, which we've already approved. I guess we got a hard copy and an email. And a VLCT notice, of course. All right, moving on to warrants. The payroll warrant, I'll pass around. I've already signed it, so there's no need to sign it. And then there's the AP warrant. Okay, while those are going on, let's talk briefly about agenda for January 8th. We're gonna have the town meeting warning. We're gonna discuss the Susie's Little Peanuts window repair, replacement bids. We are going to discuss road commissioner based on feelers that have been put out.
Oh, I thought that was the 22nd.
Well, we're just gonna, we're not gonna
Oh, we'll just
actually,
do our, okay.
we're
It's
gonna do
not the meeting, okay.
who has
Yep.
expressed interest or not, or whatever, yeah, it's not the actual
Okay.
action. What else can people think of for agenda items for the 8th?
the meeting for the town meeting, the time, you set the time and everything?
Yeah, I'm calling that the town meeting warning.
Okay.
We're basically gonna hammer out, and which that is gonna take a while, probably.
I don't think you should overload that agenda too
No,
much.
I'm not going to, because that thing will take forever. I think that's it for now.
I was curious.
That meeting's what, January 8th, right?
January 8th. So,
For me,
You okay, you don't sign it.
What's that?
Shelby, right.
Apparently Josie's still not paying federal taxes.
they don't really, they just say they urge us to give it immediate attention. We'll get immediate
Did you
attention.
see that? I'm the only one that has some federal withholding.
I have to fill it. You do?
No,
I think so. Oh, I don't know if I did.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we,
$9.62.
hey Bruce,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. I'd like to make a motion that we approve payroll warrant 2020-24 dated December 6th, 2019 in the amount of $7,077.68. 7077.68. Is there a second? Second by Shelby. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving payroll warrant 2020-24 dated December 6, 2019 in the amount of $7,077.68. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that's approved. Now I'd like to make a motion that we approve accounts payable warrant 2020-21
Oh, okay.
dated December 18th, 2019
I haven't seen it yet.
Let's check after.
That would be difficult, I don't see.
You can still read
No,
the
that's-
payroll on
Let's hold that thought.
Mine's passed
I
away.
just want to see it anyway. That's it? Okay. It's on. If I sign on front of somebody else, I know I'll never hear the end of it. Whoa, just wanna make sure I got it.
Already signed it.
That's whatever. That's not a lot of
You
things.
wanna look at that?
Okay, I'm good. That's good. I do that sound lot.
Okay, to pick up my motion where I left off, something like
The amount of,
the amount of $14,474.85. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joseph. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving accounts payable warrant 2020-21 dated December 18th, 2019 in the amount of $14,474.85 signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that's approved. I make a motion that we adjourn.
Yeah.
Is there a
Second it.
Second by Bruce. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned at 9:40.